Yeah, yeah. For some reason on mine, they never come up. So don't worry about that. If
Oh,
either
okay.
it shouldn't. Sometimes
Mine
it
always
does.
does when it's me and Tim.
Maybe that's because you pay for it. You get like you get to show your name to people.
Oh, could be.
I literally have no idea.
All right.
But
Sorry then.
no,
Now
all right.
starting for real.
Maybe eventually we'll do the official one. All right. So here we go. Now I'm definitely gonna have to edit it, Dan. All right.
Yeah, sorry.
Okay. I was planning to anyway. All right. Three, two, one. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another little mini series. I'm gonna call it. This is actually Dan's idea of Dan Reviews It. Say hello.
Hello, everybody.
Just a little backstory. As you know, some of you, please check out Dan's channel. He has a lot of TV and movie reviews over there. Always a lot of content, a lot of current stuff, and some classic stuff. And I've actually popped up over there to talk about some classic series, some classic movies, like for Dan's Big Movie and some of the Disney stuff. And I've really enjoyed that. But I've been giving your channel so much content. You wanted to give my channel a little love in return. And
Yes, had to give it back. And we did. What was the video we did last week? Time
we
Machine.
yeah, we did. Yeah, we talked for the Joe Loves Movies. You brought in one of your favorites, Time Machine, and we talked about that in the remake, which I think people actually liked. Got some okay views on that, and that was a good conversation. And so this is going to be something kind of more special. We're going to do a couple episodes of this, going through something that I had been wanting you to kind of check out vaguely, I guess, because it's one of my favorite things ever, the Planet of the Apes films, the
Yeah, and
original.
I had only seen up until last week. I had only seen the three more recent ones, the James Franco era, I call it.
Mhm.
But I'd seen parts of the original. Of course, my dad, as you know, big fan. But I had never seen any of the sequels. I never saw the 2001 that we're going to talk about in another video. So we decided to just marathon. We did 8.5 hours straight.
Huh, and I will say, Dan, by the end, I think I felt like I was maybe a little aped out at the end.
Is
I,
that right? You went to ape. We
I
called it go ape, but
yes,
you had an ape overload.
yes, it was an ape overload. All the yes, that brings us to the name of this little series of segments. It's going to be Go Ape! Exclamation point, of course.
Love
Uh,
it.
great stuff. But yeah, for this segment, we're pretty much going to break it up. We're going to talk in this video about the original 5 films in the series, the classic OG Planet of the Apes. We'll probably do one for the Burton because I feel like that's its own conversation, and then we'll do another one with the 3 Franco ones. Even though, what is the term for that universe anyway? I don't even know what's that officially
I
called.
think they just call it like the reboot
Reboot.
series or whatever. But I call it the Francos because he was in the first one, and even though that's the only one he's in, his presence is felt, I think, throughout.
Definitely his influence on Caesar's character is prevalent
Yeah.
for sure. But yeah, I guess maybe a little bit of backstory. I don't know, Dan. Do you want to have one of us kind of trade off on the little synopses first, or do you want to do them all? You want me to do them all? How do you want to do it?
You know what? That is completely up to you. You've seen the first one multiple times.
True.
So I think you should do the first one and we can alternate back and forth. I'll do the horrible second one. Spoilers.
Oh no. No. Oh no. Oh yeah, good luck. Yeah, well, yeah, okay, we'll keep it simple and I'll let people know there's going to be spoilers all over the place. So, if you haven't seen these, if you're interested in science fiction, please watch the first one at least. Spoilers is great. And the rest of them you can check out if you watch this or not, come back later, that's fine, but we're gonna talk all about these movies with lots of spoilers. Just
yeah,
heads up. But yeah, the classic 1968 Planet of the Apes. This was partially inspired too, Dan, because it wasn't until I thought about it again before watching it that Planet of the Apes is one of my favorite movies. Like I just loved that
wow.
movie as a kid. It even got me to realize I got to get that probably up on the list somewhere because it's so good. I
Is
really
that going to be in your 50?
it might actually be that I might have to make that
Oh.
adjustment because I was like, yeah, I love that so much, and I really do think that's a great sci-fi film, and I have a little detail about why when I talk briefly about the synopsis. But for those of you that don't know, I think that it's pretty standard. It is based on a French novel, which I read actually upon one subscriber back in the day was a hardcore Apes fan, wanted me to read it, and I did like the book, though it is a little bit different. And the Planet of the Apes film kind of follows it mostly closely, where you've got a couple of these astronauts who one of them is played by Charlton Heston. They're sent off basically to theoretically find maybe an inhabitable world. It's him and two other crew members. One of them, also a third one who's female. However, something goes wrong with the rocket, with the space shuttle, and they end up crash landing on this alien planet. The woman dies. Heston and his two buddies kind of just wander along for a good chunk of the film, which I think is a great part too. That is maybe not talked about enough, but just the atmosphere of that is pretty cool. But they're just wandering along this very alien seeming desert planet with all these weird thunderstorms and stuff. No real sign of life until eventually they come across some vegetation, which leads to there seems to be some primitive humanoids. They seem basically like people, and they're like, "Oh, okay, well, they seem basically like limited intelligent people, but whatever. They're friendly, just eating fruit and stuff." Classic Eloy, time machine elements
Yes,
there. So some
love that.
similarities here in the societies, and but lo and behold, in this world, actually, they're being hunted and kind of used for sport and for experimentation because they're little more than animals to the people that actually run this planet, the apes, who are kind of like at a level of I'd say low industrial tech. It's always interesting because they've got like all these dirt and sand huts, but they have like automatic weapons. So the I'd say like it was kind of weird. Like they're like late. I want to say they're like early 20th century. You know what I mean? Like they
Yeah.
don't have cars there, but whatever. I could see that they're like late 19th century basically. But far more advanced these ape like people. You've got basically the division of society you'll see is kind of that the orangutans basically run everything as the leadership. They're like the political council, the religious leadership. You've got a lot of the gorillas who are basically like military force and police force. And then you've got, I think, the chimpanzees are basically the scientists. So it's almost like a Star Trek, Starfleet color system, too, to kind of separate the different apes. But basically Heston is captured along with his friends. But and the thing is, he's shot trying to escape, so he can't speak. And a lot of the humans on this planet are basically mute. They're incapable of speech because, like apes, can't really speak, not develop vocal cords. It's basically the reverse here. But then he comes across these two scientists, Cornelius and Zira, who actually take kindly to him. They actually study humans and kind of study development and the possible similarities of maybe ape evolved from humans, and of course the orangutans and the establishment think, oh, that's impossible. They're really not keen on that idea because it might upset the established order, perhaps. And that leads into Dan's favorite character, the memeable, legendary pop culture icon, Simpsons legend, Dr. Zaius. Dr. Zaius.
Yes, I love Dr. Zaius.
Do you love him more
Um,
now or less? Or do you appreciate him more now?
that's a good question.
Because I feel like you were so excited. That was like your main thing about this, like was the Zayas joke. And I feel like once you met him, I almost you were like, oh, like you weren't. I don't know if you were the biggest fan
well,
all of a
I guess I didn't quite realize that he was a bad guy.
sudden. Oh yeah, he's like the main villain,
From all I knew was the Simpsons musical parody they did,
Dr. Zayas.
which, by the way, I mean, they would never do this today because the episodes are so short. It was like 4 minutes of like they did 2 or 3 musical
From
numbers.
chimpanzee to chimpanzee.
Yep. And then of course Dr. Zayas, Dr. Zayas, Dr. Zayas. I mean, but I didn't know necessarily that he was the bad guy. So yeah, I was. I mean, I like him as a character.
Oh yeah, I would hope so. I think he's a great
but
character.
he's a love to hate, I think.
Yeah, I will say we'll get more into him because I think Dr. Zayas earns his iconic status and his Simpsons cameo joke well
Mm-hmm.
because I think he's a very good character. But
One of the best movie villains, Joe.
okay, that's a whole video in and of
That could be
itself.
a list, but
That could be a list. But I'll tell you what,
I don't know. In sci-fi film, I think he's got to be up there,
in terms, yeah, I would say so. I think he's one of
right?
those people that might not come up as like a villain because he's not overtly evil or malicious. He's a very realistic villain in a situational sense. Like
Mm-hmm.
there are people like Dr. Zayas who have and probably still do exist to some extent. So yeah, I think he's a very well written, well done antagonist. How about that?
Okay, antagonist.
Antagonist, villainous in some ways for sure, but I kind of understood where he was coming from. I think, and to some degree, I think that's what makes him his position interesting.
Hmm.
But basically, Zira and Cornelius are trying to kind of examine Heston's character Taylor, who they also introduce Dan's absolute favorite character Nova, the love interest for the movie, the pretty
Come
you
on now.
you hey, you know, it's whatever, it's fine,
Well, look, this is
you get it.
classic for the time, of course.
You
I
gotta have
get
look. To
it.
be fair, you've got like a whole movie with a bunch of 8 people and Charlton Heston, so they need. I guess they need to have one lady in there to put on the poster.
I guess. I guess. Now we didn't talk yet, and I know you're still doing the synopsis, but we sort of missed this part. All of the nudity and the
Hey,
latent
hey, we're
homosexuality.
gonna
This was
get
a
there.
part of the story,
They're
though.
gonna yeah, we're gonna oh, absolutely no.
You
That
know.
was I don't know if it was intentional or not, but like I think that there was a lot of comfort with some of the scenes, like when Taylor and his other astronauts are kind of wandering around. They're so happy to find water. Right before they got captured, they just dive into the pool, which I think they should, as scientists, they should have studied it first. But whatever, they were just like, hey, if this is it, at least we get to bathe well,
Yeah.
But yeah, that scene where they discover tracks, they get up on the little shore there, and
You just see two
every
people going
that
with their
it's just
faces going down right in
it's three
Heston's crotch.
it's three naked guys, and
Yeah.
the camera pans just on Heston, and then they go down, and it was, I don't know if it was unintentional, but yeah,
All six of us that were watching it, I
we're
mean,
like,
we just
what?
busted a gut.
Because I'll say one thing, even though that I do think that was probably unintentional, that was still very bold for the time, I think.
Very bold. I think it might not have been unintentional, personally.
Okay, well, maybe we can
Pretty
get into that.
obvious.
Okay, pretty obvious. Well, I'm fine with it either way.
Yeah, I'm good. I'm good on it.
It makes sense. But basically, uh, Taylor is having this trouble trying to communicate. He actually is able to still write, and he actually tries to mimic the fact that he's actually from another planet, trying to get through to Cornelius, and particularly Zira, who is really fascinated by his intelligence. The fact that he seems so much more intelligent than the other humans. Like, okay, maybe he is like an advancement, maybe he's a mutation, maybe he is
Mm.
proof that apes and humans are connected in some way. Cornelius is like, I don't really want to get involved. I don't want to like get in trouble here, but he still kind of goes along because his wife, wears the pants for sure.
Very true.
But Cornelius is great. But all the while, Dr. Zaius is just trying to push it aside and hopes to get him exterminated. And eventually, though, Taylor tries to escape, which leads into when he gets captured by everybody, and then he actually manages to finally speak with his vocal cords being healed, and then iconic, take your drink for the drinking game chug, probably right.
Yeah.
Get your hands off me, you damn dirty ape. I mean, classic, great scene. Stops all the apes, like what, like, and
Hmm.
then of course there's the evidence, gets everybody to pay attention a bit more. But now Dr. Zaius is even more concerned, and they're just putting him on trial, basically, even though apparently he doesn't have rights. So why is he on trial? And then Zira and Cornelius are kind of roped in it because they're being charged with scientific heresy and disturbing the peace and all this stuff. But all the while, uh, Taylor's just basically like, trying to get through to them. And Zaius at one point basically even says, hey, like, I don't believe your space story, but I do believe that you are an intelligent human, because he knows something. And he's like, so
Right.
if you just tell me where the rest of them are so I can, find them and get rid of them or whatever, then I'll believe you. But Taylor is like, I'm telling you the truth. And he realizes that Zaius is obviously still afraid, but he could have gotten his way out if he even lied, maybe. But he's like,
Hmm.
no, I am not from here. I'm not part of this. I don't know about any mutant humans or whatever. And he's like, well, whatever. You're gonna be taken care of. We're gonna get rid of you, and your buddies, your few apes that are trying to defend you, they're gonna be put in jail, or who knows. So it's not looking good. But Cornelius and Zira's, I think it's Zira's nephew actually, who is a character I always forget about, but he's great. Kind of, he's representing the youthful hippie, anti-stick it to the man. Like, yeah, don't ever trust the adults, man.
Hmm.
He's such a '60s character. Like, it was great. He's that one kid, but he actually
I was
busts.
a fan.
I know he was great. He's a great kid. I forget the character's name, but he was great. And yeah, he busts out Charlton Heston Taylor, and he insists that Nova comes along because she's the pretty romantic lead, even though he's like, no, no, but he's like, no, the audience says we got to have her. We got to bring in some of those teenage boys who wouldn't already be here because this movie is awesome. I don't get the studio. I totally get the studio, but you know why she was brought along, Dan. You know why.
Look, she was the Weena of the bit. I get it.
Yeah, she was the Weena. She was okay. She's fine. But
She's all
anyway,
right.
she's all right. They go along, and they basically try to escape, and they meet up with Cornelius and Zira. I really am summarizing the whole movie. Well, this is in depth.
Well, look, the other four I think will be a much
The quick.
shorter synopses.
I
This is
agree.
the main one. Yeah,
This is the media. I just realized I'm
yeah.
going into so much detail about
Oh
this.
yeah.
But I would hope we would. But anyway, they're basically off because they want to go to where Taylor said he came from, where the ship crashed, the Forbidden Zone, which is basically in the society. They say don't go out there. It's dangerous. You're not allowed to go there, even though there might be a reason why. They go out there and they actually find where Cornelius was digging because he's like an archaeologist, saying, okay, we have proof of a human society that might have been more advanced at one point. And it turns out Zaius and some soldiers have been tracking them down, going to try and stop them from finding this, but that results in a shootout and Zaius gets captured and Taylor's like, well, hey, no, I'm gonna I'm gonna prove to you that there's something, if nothing else, to get these people, to get Cornelius and Zira off because of what they've done for me. I owe them. He doesn't think that like that Zaius is gonna let him go or believe him, but he's like, no, you're gonna see that maybe there's something in what he said
Yeah.
just because he wants to prove Zaius right, because he hates his guts at this point. But they actually go in there and they see, okay, there were some advanced tools, and of course the classic doll, the human doll that speaks. And he's like, well, what would an ape make a human doll that talks? Mama, and Zaius, has no answer for that one.
Yeah, that
Uh,
was a good one.
and that was a good one. And then basically that kind of results in that. But Zaius, there's another shootout, and okay, well, Taylor's like, look, whatever, there's your proof. I'm gonna leave. I'm gonna take some ammunition, gonna take my woman some food. I'm just gonna go out and explore the Forbidden Zone and see what happens because I'm done with all the apes. And Zaius is like, okay, fine, but you're just not going to like what you find out there. Maybe there's a reason why I didn't want people to know about man, because man is evil. Man has nothing but destruction. I don't want any connection to man and apes, which is a theme that'll be prevalent throughout the other films. It's
Hmm.
kind of interesting. But Taylor's like, whatever. He and Nova go off, and Zaius, like a class act, goes back on his word. No, we're gonna blow up all the evidence, and we're gonna put Cornelius Zero on trial. I'm like, oh, great. And Zero asks him, what will he find out there, Doctor? His destiny. Epic final line. And then,
Hmm.
there's a little bit of walking, and then, biggest spoiler that you all already know, which is side note, my one of the things that makes me the most angry about any movie related thing of all time. But anyway,
The
spoilers just
spoilers.
in case. Possibly biggest spoiler of all time, unintentionally. Uh, we see that the Statue of Liberty is actually on the beach, and Taylor realizes, oh no, he actually somehow came back to Earth again in the far future, and mankind blew itself up in the atomic waste. This is what's left. And, damn it, you blew it all to hell, you maniacs. Another classic line. Uh, you know, Classic shot of him kind of head in the sand, looking up at the Statue of Liberty, fade to black, and a nice uplifting theme, like all these movies turn out to be. And that's Planet of the Apes, Dan.
That's yep. That's yes. I felt like I rewatched it there. There is a lot to unpack with this movie. Obviously, I
Yeah.
think
Oof.
like I said, we're going to talk obviously the most about this one. The other ones,
We'll go through it.
more in short order, I would say. But
Hmm.
um, so many things. First of all, I am the historian guy.
Hmm.
So let me tell you a little bit about some of the people involved with the movie.
Hmm.
Okay. Now, I had said to you earlier today there was a bunch of commentaries on the DVDs. I didn't get to watch any of that, but this movie, you'll be very happy to know, was selected by the National Film Registry. It's in the Library of Congress, your favorite thing.
They know, Dan. They know.
They know. And can you guess what year it's a significant year they selected it?
Geez, a significant year. D- uh, I don't even know what.
It was 2001, the year of the Burton re-release.
Ugh.
The Library of Congress probably in a meeting said, well, we'll show these people what a real Planet of the Apes movie looks like.
They
We'll
got to
select
know
them.
this is
They knew.
this oh that, look, I'm telling you, man,
So
they're on point, I think, with their selections.
yes, they usually are very on point. So this was directed by Franklin James Schaffner, who directed. He's an Academy Award winning director,
Okay.
not for this film,
Okay.
but he directed, I think, another one that you really like, a war movie, Patton.
He did Patton.
He directed Patton and won an Oscar for it.
Okay, that, you know what, I was
So
gonna ask what else he directed, but Patton is a
yeah,
very good movie. So
so
that
now it's all coming together. And then one of the writers was, of course, Rod Serling,
which I
great Rod,
forgot about. That
which
makes
I never
total
knew.
sense. Yeah.
But the other writer, Michael Wilson, he was part of the Hollywood blacklist in the 50s
Hmm.
for the the McCarthyism and all of that.
Hmm.
So this is, I guess, one of his first things back in the fray of things.
Interesting.
And of course, the makeup, so widely known, and all of this. So they did actually award it wasn't like a competitive Oscar, but they awarded like
Honorary one, right?
an honorary Oscar to the team sort of that did all of the things.
Hmm.
But it was nominated as well for best costume design and a score as well. The score, actually, we should talk about the score for a second.
Score is amazing, dude.
It's got like this really staccato piano thing that keeps going and going.
Dun, 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 and
Um,
a lot of percussion, and I one of my
yep.
favorite little bits that they tie in is the kind of that almost looping, the ape like chanting whoo whoo whoo, that's in there throughout.
Yes,
Really good.
yes, they kept bringing that around as well. So,
Love it.
yeah, big movie, huge profit for the studio. Obviously, one of the big movies of the year. But now I, of course, knew that it was Earth. If I didn't know it from the Simpsons musical, I would have known it just from pop culture. Like you mentioned, it's on the
Well,
press material for
it's
the
on the
movie.
posters for the movie.
So stupid. Now, at the time, I don't think it was, though. I think that's retroactive.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure
You
that's
know,
retroactive.
So I tried to watch this
That
under
mindset.
under the mindset of, okay, if I didn't know that this was Earth, if that was going to be a big fat reveal, how would I have, judged the movie maybe differently? Because knowing it was Earth the whole time,
You were thinking about it the whole time.
well, it was still enjoyable. But yeah, there was absolutely no suspense really at the end of the day. I mean, I wondered, I guess, how he was going to get out of it and whatever. But
Hmm.
knowing it was Earth all along, the big reveal meant nothing to me.
That's unfortunate.
It is unfortunate,
Well, I see the thing is, I
but
saw it
you
at
had to know, right?
no. See, the thing
Okay,
is, as a kid, growing up, in the '90s when I watched it on VHS or whatever, I mean, I didn't see any movie posters or anything on
right.
there. So like, I'm pretty sure the first time I saw it, I had no idea that it was Earth, because I didn't know. That was before they put plastered everywhere. I'm pretty sure.
Why? Why would they do it?
It's literally one of the worst decisions about a plot twist it might be, it's legendary. It's the worst.
Yes.
It
It would be like Universal deciding, was this Universal too? No,
uh
this was Fox. This was a Fox property. But
okay.
it would be like Universal putting as the tagline on The Sixth Sense, he sees dead people, comma, and Bruce Willis is one of them.
And he is one. Like,
Like I don't understand why you would do that.
I think I have a feeling, I mean, the only thing I could think to excuse it is that maybe the twist was such a big deal originally, and it was so talked about that it became like something that was so commonly known that they're just like, everybody's just going to know this anyway, which I don't
But
think is necessarily true.
no, and here's the thing, Joe. We're talking about now a movie that's 50 plus years old, and the
But
truth is, other generations are finding it.
yeah,
So if they know about it already, I just don't think they're gonna find it as impactful. And they may not even think it is supposed to be a spoiler or anything like that.
they're like,
They
oh,
might be like,
okay.
"Oh, why is Heston so mad?" Like it was pretty obvious it was Earth all along, but it wasn't obvious if you watched it originally,
No, no.
at all.
I
So
agree.
I definitely tried to view it sort of in that sense. I really liked this movie a lot. I loved it actually.
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't know why you wouldn't. It's a great film. I mean, in all honesty,
Well,
like I was like, I think Dan will really like this. I don't know. It's. I mean, and I'll be honest. It kind of. I must have heard Rod Serling's name at some point, but I completely forgot he helped write this. And then I'm like, well,
yeah.
now, like literally being one of the kings of sci-fi writing,
And one of the last things he did,
one of the
because
last
he
things he did.
died. He died 6 years later.
I always
So
Gallery was after this, right?
yeah, Night Gallery was after this. And that was, but just 1 year. Night Gallery premiered in 70, or 2 years, I guess.
Oh wow.
Night Gallery premiered in 70, and he did a couple of other things, but yeah, for the most part, this and Night Gallery were his last sort of contributions to the world here.
And like
Um,
just looking at it, the movie, like in retrospect, like the whole thing just basically seems like an extended Twilight Zone premise. Like, oh, he
well,
gets
it does, and
uh
even that twist is very Twilight Zone.
like because there's always a twist with the moral. I'm like, yeah, this is just a big
Right,
Twilight Zone episode. He's
right.
on the planet of the like literally you can see it black and white, the planet of the apes. He Taylor is a space astronaut.
Yeah,
Deep in space, what will you find? Will man learn his true nature? When he's removed from his technology or whatever the thing was that, and you just
whatever
like
the bit is.
and then like and then he so we learned that you can just hear the narration at the end of the movie like but,
Yes,
but it's actually much more ominous without it, I think.
I would agree with that. And that also goes back to the score, this great Jerry Goldsmith score. Uh,
Oh, Jerry Goldsmith, you brought it up, man. He's done so many great scores for a lot of I think Star Trek and stuff too, right?
yeah, I had recognized the name, so I sort of, as we were watching it, looked up some of the things he did, and just mentioning the ones, you were just like, oh my god, like that's literally all of my favorite movies. He did, well, Patton again. Let's talk about Patton.
Mhm.
But you mentioned Star Trek, but he's also done a handful of really cool horror movies. He did Poltergeist, he did Alien,
Mhm.
and then he did, Chinatown and Mulan in 1999. I mean, he really ran the gamut of
Yeah,
so many different things. Hoosiers, Basic Instinct, The Omen. I mean, these three movies could not be much different.
but
Uh,
he's
and
got
and he
scores.
did all of them.
He knows how to get the musical soundtrack
Yes,
in tie with the emotions of each
yes.
film. And now I knew the name, I knew Jerry Goldsmith, but I didn't.
And
I don't think I've ever looked at his filmography, man.
and by the way, every single one of those movies I just mentioned, including Planet of the Apes too, he was nominated for Oscars for score.
Seriously.
Every single one of those movies, he was nominated like 20 times.
Well,
The one he won for was The Omen.
huh. Okay.
But yeah, I mean, he did all of those scores and more that got Oscar nominated, and like we mentioned, Star Trek: The Motion Picture as well. So
Yes.
I think the score for this movie really really sets the tone in a big way. I think there's, I would say, like two to three things that really make this movie what it is.
Okay.
Heston,
Yeah.
I think another, and what's funny about Heston is he is very emulated and sort of even made fun of a little bit, in some of the sketch comedy shows and whatever, because he's easy. He's an easy target.
Sure.
He is a little bit of a hammy over actor, but somehow
I prefer
he really
theatrical.
makes it work.
Yeah. Well, I would say compared to well, you say hammy. I think that kind of goes in line with just the line of
Well,
ham
it's of the
versus
time.
of theatrical. Like you think about
Yes,
old Hollywood is basically theater. You got to
yes,
project more so that they can hear you. That's part of just the time. But Heston, you think about Ten Commandments. You think about Ben Hur. There's a lot of that. Like
yes.
why are
A
you
lot of
doing this to me?
yelling.
It's
Um,
a lot of strong emotional stuff, and how he makes it work here. I think it's I think it has a lot to do with the fact that he's a good actor and that this is not a character quite like that who in other movies he's usually like the main guy, he's the action
right.
hero, here he's out of his depth, he's vulnerable, he's kind of has to deal with all these different parameters closing in on him and he's also playing a character who's written as very cynical, very closed off,
Right.
and not having a lot of faith in other people and things. And ironically, he kind of is forced to like try and rediscover that to give him a sense of his own survival, is ironically trying to kind of push for those things. His character's kind of like, his character when they're walking through the desert, man, is just railing into his one guy, like, everybody you ever knew was dead. There's no reason to examine anything more. Plant your flag. United States of America doesn't matter. Like it's
Right.
just like he's really. I'm like, he just clearly left because he didn't have anything behind, that he cared about, whatever. And then it's like he has to learn how precious a lot of that was, and now it's too late, and it's
Yeah.
like everything he kind of expected, that he was almost like kind of half-heartedly like joking about at the beginning of the movie, became true. So I think it has to do a lot more with just the fact that the character's written in a very believable way, that's kind of an antithesis of a lot of the standard Hollywood hero roles he had before, and that he is a good actor, that he can handle that. I think that's the answer to the question.
Well, and so that leads me actually to the other part. So I said there's three main things to make this movie work so well. One is Heston. Two is the score. We already talked about Jerry Goldsmith. But number three is
The Apes.
the script, but specifically the characters.
Okay.
I think this movie doesn't work as well with characters that aren't quite as A, strong, and B, well defined as Cornelius, Zira, George, and Dr. Zayas. Now everybody else is sort of disposable. We've talked about some of the people, but I think those four are there, and they're very different. Like, the Apes, you could easily have written something that's like, oh well, all these apes are basically the same except these two are good, everybody else sucks, whatever it is.
No.
But Cornelius and Zira are very different from each other, and both very different from Dr. Zayas, obviously. So I think that's a huge factor in the success of this movie as well.
I think you're right, and that also, I think that combine that with the script being so good and the actors being able to really work with that, in addition to having to portray that behind all that makeup and emote in such a way, like you really get a sense that Zira and Cornelius, they really feel like, you're right, very defined people, not just throwaway creatures or one note, one dimensional characters.
Right.
They also seem like they're flawed. They have their strengths and their weaknesses, and there are a married couple that bickers, and they've obviously have a history that's well defined, and the little nuances of their movements and some of the grunts and the sound design. Just there's so much in just how they interact that I think speaks to bringing those characters. And even you're right, Dr. Zayas, in relation to some of the ancillary characters, like some of the other orangutan judges have slightly different personalities and
Yeah.
different motivations. Like, they might not always rule completely with what Dr. Zayas says. They might have their own opinion. The one guard that runs the zoo, he's got some jokes. He doesn't seem like a particularly bad gorilla. He just seems like a guy that's doing his job, and
Right.
honestly, he's trying to prevent the animals, the humans, from attacking Zira. You know, he got duped twice, by the way, that poor guy.
Yeah.
But I like that, instead of the reverse this in the second movie, where the gorillas, have different person. No, all gorillas are evil. Anyway, spoilers,
Well, we'll
that
get
carries
to it.
over into all the rest of these damn movies.
We'll get to
So
it.
anyway,
But
yeah, you're right, man.
yeah, that's all part of the script. But I think the character specifically is really. I mean, yes, the themes are great as well, and but and then you mentioned the makeup too. And
Yeah, I mean, I was
mentioned,
surprised you didn't say that part 4 is also all the ape makeup.
well, because I think the reason I didn't mention that is because yes, that is a big part of why the movie works, but and for the time it was obviously outstanding. I think it still holds up today. But I think even if you stripped that away,
it could still work.
I think as long as you had the characters and the score and Heston, I think even if it was a little cheesier with the makeup, I think it still would have worked.
Wow. So
to be honest,
you think no,
I'm not slighting the makeup.
No. I like what you're saying. You're admitting the makeup is really good, but it could have been not quite as good, and the movie still could have been really great.
I agree.
That's awesome.
Yes, that's exactly what I'm saying.
That's awesome. Okay.
They did an incredible job with the makeup. There's no doubt about that. It still holds up today. I said to you,
you were like,
wow, I can't believe that they're throwing so much money away on CGI because this looks
Yeah,
pretty
you
cool.
were like you couldn't
You
believe how
know,
that like this is great. Just do this today.
yeah. I feel like it's really going to anger me watching the Burton edition,
Uh,
because I know that a lot of CGI was used. And look, we talked about that when we did the Time Machine double, because the
oh,
Guy Pearce Time Machine was right around that same time.
we'll get to the Burton
But
one, but Burton did try to use practical effects. I don't think the effects are the biggest issue with the Burton movie based
okay,
up
many
on
other areas. But
yeah.
yes, as a rule, I think this movie could have looked not as good, but still been as effective from
That's
a
that
storytelling standpoint.
that's really interesting. I that's not something I was expecting, but I'll take it. That's great. Um yeah, man. You know, we'll talk about this more, I guess, when we sort of wrap up the whole thing. But I
Okay.
gotta say, there's some really intense, dark moments in this movie, like people getting murdered, and also the blood, classic G or whatever it
Yeah,
was.
good G-rated movie. Yeah,
All the people getting their throats blown out, and the stuff. The I think the two biggest ones were his one friend. The black guy did die first.
he
Yeah,
did. Yeah.
who by the way we did like he was your favorite for the
Oh
first
my
like
god, I
half hour.
loved him. It was
He's like,
great.
stop arguing, let's figure this shit out.
Right.
But
Right.
yeah, he gets murdered and stuffed in a museum. He Heston runs into him, and also his buddy Landon. Uh, finds out they lobotomized him to experiment on him, and you
That
cut
was
out his
rough.
brain, you bloody baboon. Then
Yeah.
with the dead eyes. Like, there's just moments that I'll admit I watched this as a kid, and they did scare me. Some of these things, there's some scary elements, and of course the ending is pretty dark. Could be pretty dark.
Very dark, I'd say.
Yeah. But no, I agree, man. Tell me, okay, we can't like end the discussion of the movie without talking a little more in depth about Dr. Zaius, because you gotta
Yeah.
I agree with you about him, and I think he's also a very fleshed out character, and you could see that he has some knowledge, and he's kind of fearful of these new developments kind of establishing things, and I think that that ties into the theme of, obviously there's an interesting commentary about fear of evolution ideas versus other things
Hmm.
that they're touching on, but it's really more, it's more about just kind of going against the status quo, and also just the idea that he has the knowledge about mankind's destructive nature, and he doesn't want apes to find out they're connected to man because that could somehow lead into them making man's mistakes. And he's like, no, some of this knowledge is meant to be forbidden for the sake of the civilization we have now. um,
And look, obviously, there's some parallels here that they're making with contemporary society and politics and government and things like that, and I
sure.
think that's fine. But yeah, I thought Zayas could have been a
One
just
note,
sort of
mustache.
one note, like I right mustache twirler, as we call them. I am evil, the end. But I do think, no, I think he does have some motivation. I think he has a little bit of an arc as well.
He in the second movie he kind of
I was going to
does.
say we see it much more. I think later in the series, but even in this movie, a little bit, because he obviously, when we first meet him, we, I think, have some notions about him that maybe as we go along, get a little bit reversed or dashed or what have you.
Hmm.
Um,
Well, he's
but yeah, I
somebody
like Zayas.
with the I guess you're right with the arc of him sort of actually, finding some real evidence, and kind of like that's kind of, it kind of sort of affirms his suspicions about what he's heard
Right.
about in the scriptures about man. In a way, it's kind of confirmed his beliefs in a sense, but it also kind of, makes him realize that, okay, there is some truth here that I can't really ignore. But he kind of almost develops like, I think he still hates Taylor, but
Oh yeah.
he still hates Taylor, but he kind of respects him a little more in a sense. And I think that the interesting thing about Zaius is he's a character that is a classic example of trying to doing the wrong thing because he thinks it's the right thing for the
Right.
right reason. He's motivated by fear for his people, than anything. And the interesting thing is though he doesn't really see humans as lesser exactly. He just wants them kept that way for because he thinks it's just better.
And
Based.
look, that's a very classic sci-fi trope.
Mhm.
We can't deny that. But I think because of the way the script was written, like we said, I think Serling and his partner really were able to flesh this guy out so he is much more than just a one-dimensional villain.
Absolutely.
So yeah.
Yeah, man. Is there anything else about the first one you want to talk about? I think we covered it pretty good.
Yeah, I think we really should move on to some of the other ones. Should we grade as we go or all at once, or what do you want to do?
Oh, I mean, we could probably give this one a grade. I mean, it's probably like an A+ for me, man. I love this movie.
Yeah, you love it. This for me is an A.
hmm
Is it a time machine? Maybe not. I think it has a lot of the same components that make that movie great, though.
hmm
So yeah, I mean, I can easily see it being a classic sci-fi fave if I watched it a couple of more times.
Oh yeah, I think you could watch it again and you'd get it up there. I think it's not an A+ because of Nova. She's pretty much a throwaway.
Well, yeah, I think there's two reasons it's not an A+. Right, Nova is one of them,
and the twist for you not being a thing. Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's hard to give it a lesser grade because of that. Because of course, if I was watching it in 1968, I have to sort of take that into consideration. I wouldn't have known that. But yeah, Nova is just very, very basic. And I would say other than those four main characters, like his buddies aren't really fleshed out at all. Like, yeah, I
No.
did like the black guy we mentioned, but I like what happened to them, but other than like they're the other humans, I didn't really have an attachment to them. Yeah.
Gotcha.
So I would say those are the reasons. But yes, great movie, obviously A.
Okay, well, I figured it was going to be A+, but you know what? Because you volunteered, you get to try and synopsize in maybe not quite as much depth, but I want you to.
No, it will not be in as much depth.
Beneath the Planet of the Apes.
All right. So, well, first of all, let's talk about this. So,
they realized they had a hit.
Well, yes, they had a hit. This one actually, even though it's critically hated and most audience doesn't care for it, it did make a lot at the box office because of the success of that first one.
Sure.
But I will say something. You led me astray.
What?
So I'm not even sure if you know this.
Oh no.
Roddy McDowall is not in the second film.
Wait, what?
No, he was under contract to do some other things. So this David Watson plays Cornelius in the second film.
What?
McDowall is in the other three, plus the first one. So he's in 4 of the 5, and he did the TV show, obviously, but he is not in this movie.
Well, you know what? That's a mark against it. But still, props to the guy because he did a great Roddy McDowall Cornelius impression. I never thought.
I sure didn't know.
Wow.
You told me it was McDowell, and because
I thought it was. I thought it was
the
McDowall.
Performance. I took it at face. I thought, all right,
look, it's a point less because it's not him, but point to that guy for doing a good job because I had no idea.
Yeah. Let's see if we know anything else. He was in 4 movies.
Oh, well.
And this is one of them.
One of them is this. Oh, okay.
Okay. Mostly TV shows. He appeared in The Bionic Woman, Charlie's Angels, The Girl from Uncle. All right. So.
Okay.
So we don't know this person, but he did a good Cornelius. I'll give him that.
Kudos to him. Yeah, for sure, man. Yeah. Absolutely.
All right. So this takes place directly following the events of the original Planet of the Apes. In fact, it even starts the same way because you have a spaceship crashing. And yes, you do. Yep. And we've got a new
Taylor
astronaut. We called him Tyler because it's basically Taylor again.
Spoilers, we riffed the whole movie pretty much.
Oh my gosh. So anyway, his name's Brent. And he survives with just one other person, but then he dies anyway, that other guy, so he gets buried. So it's sort of like the first one. The first one had 3 survivors. This one, they're just like, let's get to the bits here, Well, it should be worth noting too, the first movie is by far the longest of the series. It's almost 2 hours. This one's 95 minutes because they've already set up the world, and then they've set up the whole premise already because this is the same premise.
Which kind of makes you wonder
So
why they literally. Just not to skip your synopsis. I do want to hear more details, but
yeah,
the
oh, you'll hear.
the first half of this movie is literally the first movie, but sped up, pretty much.
Yes, it really is. So this guy Brent, played by James Franciscus, we don't know him from anything, but he gets out of the ship and he says, "Well, wait, what planet is this on? This ain't Earth." So we do that whole bit again. Okay.
Uh-huh. Tell me more.
So, but then
Sounds
he
familiar.
sees Nova, our old friend.
Oh, okay.
Nova's here, and he notices, oh my God, she's wearing George Taylor's dog tags. You must know George Taylor. Lead me to him. But she, of course, still doesn't talk. So, she can't really communicate very well. So why are they keeping her around? I'm not sure.
You know why?
Other than the eye candy, I guess.
That's it.
But he's got to slip it in. So he rides. She does lead him. Hold on.
She does get better in this one. You got to give her credit.
A little bit.
A little bit.
All right. So she takes him to Ape City. So she does do that. She leads him to the Ape City.
Good.
So he sees the things, but at the very exact moment that he's led there, they're having a big rally about, let's conquer the Forbidden Zone.
With Dan, one thing I will say about all these Ape movies, there are some iconic lines, and this has one. This scene, do you remember it?
I don't.
See, even this one has some good things. I will say, the only good human is a dead. That's iconic.
Yes. Which, by the way, they still use, these days in different forms and whatever.
Well, do you know the history of that?
Of that line?
Mm-hmm.
I don't.
Well, you know how like sometimes there'll be like little bits, like in the first movie, there's the "I never met an ape I didn't like," that's a
yes.
I think it's George Washington or something, I forget.
Yeah.
But I know that one is it's got a bit of a darker connotation because it's the only good Indian's a dead Indian. So it's historical.
Okay.
They do a lot of these that's a little historical bit they're doing.
And I've heard it more recently in the Trump era. I don't know who said it. It wasn't Trump, but somebody said the only good Democrat is a dead Democrat.
Well, so you can see what they're
so they're obviously, aping from this movie.
All the gorillas are bad now, by the way. I hope we talk about some of these things, but sorry.
Yeah, so look, I'm getting to it. All of the gorillas are bad, of course. But yes, so he stumbles upon at the exact moment this big rally that's taking place, and let's conquer the Forbidden Zone. Let's grab all the food and whatever. And Dr. Zayas is not down because, of course, he knows what's there. He doesn't want people to find out. Same as the first movie. So Brent is seen, wounded, and then taken to the home of the great Cornelius and Zira. So now we've got that. Yes. So now we meet them again, treat the wound. They hide him when Dr. Zayas comes over.
You're getting just annoyed talking about
the whole bit. So that all happened. All right. So now.
Okay.
Now we sort of get a little bit. Oh no! Wait. First they get captured again.
Again, yeah.
All right, I forgot. Hold on. First, Brent and Nova get captured.
They find
and
horses.
then they want to use them for target practice, but instead they hide out. Okay, so here's where it starts to differ a bit.
Okay.
Because now they're at the New York City subway, and he realizes, oh my God, it was Earth all along. Pounds the pavement. Oh, why? Why did you do it? The whole bit. And then it isn't quite as exciting as when Heston does it, but we get it. And then he hears this sound that makes him follow into the tunnels and whatever. So then they find this water fountain that Nova drinks from. And then I forget what exactly happens at the water fountain, but it ain't good. But through that, they discover these people who are telepathic, and they are worshiping this big, enormous bomb in the middle of the subway station. And so then they're captured, Brent and Nova again. First, they were captured by the gorillas. Now they're captured by these people. And then they're interrogated by the humans. And then, well, they get the explanation that, we survived the Holocaust, we're mutated. That's why we have the telepathy. But anyway, he goes and gets thrown in their jail, and oh my God, who's there? Knock, knock, who's there? Heston. Heston who from the first movie. All right, so then they finally meet him. The two of them, have a big tussle with the guards. They eventually escape. Da 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 da. The end of the movie, the whole planet gets destroyed. Big bomb goes off, and then that's it.
Happy again.
Well, these are not what I call uplifting endings.
No, surprisingly, the series is not very
No.
much.
So what was upsetting to the studio about this movie is that it was such a big hit that they were like, well, we have to make more.
But we don't
And
want
then
to.
they were like, well, wait, we just blew up the entire world. So you and I will discuss how they make that work, or lack thereof. We'll talk about it in 3, 4, and 5. I think this is pretty universally accepted as the worst of the 5. And I would, I don't know if I agree with that entirely.
Oh shoot! Oh,
okay.
Oh my!
Now this might be a plot twist as big as finding out that it's Earth, Joe.
I'm look. Here's the thing. I'll let you know because I do want to hear your opinions. But
okay, tell me.
Much like the Star Trek movies, I enjoy them all to some extent, right? So like even though I can admit some are worse than others and they have their problems, maybe they're not all, good movies per se, I can find something enjoyable in them all. And I think the same is true of these Apes movies. I think, okay, here's the interesting thing. I do think that the second one is typically considered the worst from what I know, but it's never been my least favorite.
Of these 5 or just of the entire series?
Of these 5, it has never it's never been the bottom. No.
Okay, so I'm a little torn on 2 and the other one that I don't care for.
I think I know what the other one is, by the way.
Yeah, I'm sure you do. I think this is probably going to get a worse grade from me.
Sure.
Because of its sheer lack of originality.
Yeah.
But I think I would probably watch the other one again before I watched this one. I don't really have much desire to ever see this again. But I will say, I think, let's talk about the good of this first.
Yeah, please do, actually.
I think what they did with the human component in the subway station, and the telepathy, I think that is all very interesting.
It is. It's actually the coolest thing about the movie.
Very cool. And I would say that I would have liked it. Actually, this might surprise you. I think I would have liked it more if Heston wasn't in it.
Ooh.
If they found out that these people murdered him or something.
Okay.
Instead of just locking him up. And look, I get that everybody, of course, wanted to see Heston. You got to bring him back. From what our friend Brittany told us when we were watching it, he didn't really want to do it, which you can see because he's only in like 2 scenes.
2 scenes, and he's just literally one of the other scenes is with him and Nova in the desert. He's with some pretty girl just being Charlton Heston. By the way, we forgot about his line, of course, in the first movie. He's like, I had every woman I wanted because I'm Charlton Heston.
Right. And he should have added a few men too. Did you see the earlier part of the movie?
You're right.
I digress.
Correct.
But yes, he's big Lothario. We got it.
Sure.
But I think because he is in it, it actually reminds us how much more of a pale imitation this Brent guy is.
Yeah, it's sad. He's such a Charlton Heston light. Even the hair and beard.
Yeah.
It's like, it's sad. And it's that's the problem, is that a lot of the things they're trying to do with the movie are obvious. Like they didn't quite get what they wanted. Like I agree. I actually like your idea of them looking for him and finding out he died. Is kind of like an ominous picture of his fate in the last movie. But I think it's clear that it's incredibly obvious that they would have just wanted him to continue his journey and find these people, which I think would have been acceptable too. But the thing is, it would have felt, the first half of the movie would have felt more like a sequel instead of literally just redoing the first movie and then becoming this other sequel, which is another movie. That's the problem.
That's clearly the biggest flaw of the movie, is that the first 30 minutes or so is a direct ripoff of that first movie. The other thing is this movie has by far the least, well, except for five, because it's a different, we'll get to it, but this has by far the least Cornelius and Zira.
Hmm.
And I don't like that either. And obviously, part of that maybe because Roddy McDowall wasn't available to do Cornelius, so maybe they had to write around it. I don't know.
Uh-huh.
But in terms of McDowall or the Cornelius lineage, let's say, we don't see much of it in this movie, and I think
No.
that's a detractor as well because I love those characters.
No, I think we'll talk about it more, and I'm sure you'll probably agree
Yeah,
because we'll talk more about these characters more, I think, in the next movie. But I would say that in a lot of ways, though Heston is perhaps the most iconic thing about the movie in a way, the heart of the series is Cornelius and Zira, and then to extent Caesar, obviously later on.
agreed.
So I feel like
Yeah,
they're, in a weird way, they kind of take on the mantle. It's an interesting thing, but no, I do agree with that.
but even the score of this, so like it sounded sort of familiar, and I was like, okay, like is this that same guy? And it's most certainly not. But this guy is another, like he wants so badly to be that first guy.
Jerry Goldsmith, yeah.
Guess what he did? Star Trek 4, The Voyage Home. And he
He's
did
literally
the original Lord of the Rings in 1950,
oh,
1978.
he's trying. He's trying to be that guy.
RoboCop 2.
So he's a pretty big
So
guy. Yeah.
he's done a lot of things, but it's all like following in these footsteps of Goldsmith.
So you think
and
he's
failing.
definitely he's a goldsmith. He's a goldsmith kind of like I don't know, initiary or something.
But that's what everybody is in the movie. Everybody is an imitator.
Of something else.
Brent is trying to do Taylor. And obviously we know now David Watson was trying to do McDowell. He's the only one that succeeded because we didn't know.
Yeah, okay. He was great. That kind of blows my mind a little bit.
But they are only in a few scenes.
Which is why, because how long could they keep that up? Yeah.
Right, exactly. Right. So I get it. But yeah, I mean, overall, look, there's more exciting things to talk about with some of these other films. So sure. I don't think we need to dwell too much on this movie.
No.
But I think we got a couple of positives out. I think the telepathy thing, I really think is cool. I think it's cool that they found them. I think the New York subway thing, makes sense. I like that.
Well, before we finish up with it, you brought up something that I wanted you to elaborate on because you mentioned how Dr. Zaius has a bit of an arc you kind of liked, and that's definitely more
yes.
Can't forget about that. That's kind of a cool thing.
Well, I guess that is true. So we don't really know
what happened.
We don't know what Zaius's relation is necessarily to these humans. Did we find out? He didn't know about them, right?
No, well, this is the thing.
Or do we not know?
Well, remember, he thought that it was just like they were like Taylor, where maybe they could speak, maybe they were a little more advanced. So he didn't know they were mutants that could have telepathy, but but they were still warlike and against apes or whatever. He thought so. So he didn't know the details, but he ended up being right. Zaius is right. It is the movie,
yes, which is look, and that's fine. But Zaius refuses to help Taylor and Brent stop the bomb from going off.
Yeah, actually.
Because he says, look, man is evil. F them. F this place. Da, 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 da. And so I think it's an interesting sort of showdown there at the end.
Of like ideals almost.
Yes, yes. And look, Zaius, I'll give him this. He is fairly resolute in his belief system.
But he also, it turns out, did have a soft spot for Cornelius and Zira because apparently they weren't in jail. He's kind of got a better relationship with them now. Like he's like just kind of like, just do your job. And so he wasn't going to like execute them or anything. He's like,
Well, look. Even monsters do have soft spots. And obviously Cornelius and Zira are great. They have done a lot of research. They've been very important for the ape community
for sure.
But no, I like where they took Dr. Zaius in this movie.
Mm-hmm. I agree. Yeah, interesting kind of final scene with him and Taylor for sure.
Mm-hmm.
He's like monologuing even as like they're about to explode. Like he doesn't care. Like I was right, damn it.
Yeah, basically. I mean, Taylor's trying to stop the bomb from going off his ace. It's
Did
like, no, F those.
Also, there are also cool little, obviously some cool imagery in this movie that ties in it. And one of the interesting things is, as Taylor's dying, he literally, was trying to kind of stop the bomb going off by pressing the button or whatever, and he ends up just kind of like, being the guy to pull it down and launch the bomb. So, in a way, Taylor kind of initiated the destruction that he
Yes,
was so horrified about in the first place.
that's
So,
true.
well, interesting visual.
It is, and again, I just
Your your tornness is interesting to me. I don't know.
well, because I wish they would have either excised him from the movie entirely,
Hmm.
so it could have been its own thing,
Or committed.
or made him. See, now when they do movies like this, they sign people to three
Three,
picture
four.
deals
Yeah.
right off the bat. If it's a success, great, you're contracted. If it's not, then goodbye.
Hmm.
But back then, of course, they didn't have that, so they didn't. I
They
feel
didn't
like,
know.
well, it would have been better because I do like Taylor's Heston's portion at the end
Hmm.
with the bomb, because it really is sort of antithetical to what he was trying to do in the whole first movie.
Sure.
But uh, because it's like, oh, afterthought Heston, I just
Uh.
the Brent character stinks
Oh, he's
so much.
terrible. So bland.
He's
So.
so awful. It's like, I don't know. So look,
Yeah. It's a mixed bag for me.
mixed bag. However, I think you will have a higher grade than me, because you've said that you don't dislike any of these movies. But this for me is a negative.
Okay.
It's too derivative of the first one,
Hmm.
and obviously from all the elements we mentioned that did not pan out,
Hmm.
I can't in good conscience give this a positive grade. But
Sure.
it's just underneath that level because of the things I did like about it. So I would leave this with a C minus.
Oh, okay. Well, I, well, I don't really love this one, and also kind of going through these movies again, I kind of had some different feelings about them for sure. This one, um, I want to say it's possibly my least favorite. Well, I don't know. It's the worst one, like technically, because
Yeah.
it's just such a mixed bag and stuff.
Yeah. No,
It's there's too many big glaring issues. I'm like, it's not really a good movie, but it's got a lot of interesting ideas, and in some ways is kind of more interesting and memorable than perhaps some of the other movies. So I that's why I actually kind of agree with you. I would give it a C.
okay.
I think it's an extremely mixed bag,
Yeah.
but obviously within that C, there are some of the most interesting things. In some ways, it's the most interesting movie of the whole thing, other than the original. It just is so poorly handled.
Yeah, and I know exactly what you mean, because right, like I said earlier, like I'm not sure if it's my least favorite in the series. It's definitely the worst grade of the
It's the
series,
worst made one, but
but
there's some cool things I really like
yes,
about it.
yes, and that just makes it more frustrating.
That's the thing.
You
It's
know,
definitely the most frustrating because you see, and even like for instance, like you brought it up, when they go beneath the Planet of the Apes, it actually becomes the movie.
yeah,
That when they have the mutated society with them worshiping the bomb, obviously it's a little heavy-handed, but whatever. It ties in with all the nuclear fear, and that becomes like they literally worship the power of that
right,
destruction, and their whole society's interesting. Their powers are weird. They're creepy, and like you said, that final showdown's cool. Like that's the best part, like the last 20-25 minutes, and I just
right.
wish that was more of the actual movie.
Well, and that's also the issue of having such a great premiere to live up to.
Hmm.
Can you imagine, you've been waiting 2 years? I watched them all in the same night, but can you imagine waiting 2 years after one of your all-time favorite movies, Planet of the Apes? Oh my God, there's going to be another one, and I'm sure the marketing had Heston in it.
Oh,
I'm
it did.
sure they littered the trailers with that. That would be. I should have watched at least
uh
the trailers on the
Actually,
DVD, but
it's funny.
um,
I'll have to send it to you. I'll send it to you maybe when we're done. I might add them in here if I edit it. But one
mhm.
of the things on the VHS I had actually had a little promo trailer for each of the movies, which I watched before this just to find. It was that old VHS promo. I remember, yeah, when I was a kid renting them, it was great.
Yeah,
This one is Planet of the Apes. They have like a couple second clips with some of the great lines. But for the second movie, They had a couple. They had a few clips with Heston. No clips of the other guy in that one at
Right.
all.
And he's the star of the movie. So what does that tell you?
That tells me that's rough. And I'll be honest.
You
As a
know?
kid, it didn't
Yeah.
bother me as much. I'm like, oh, this is cool. It's a movie. But having watched the movie on the big screen with you, Planet of the Apes, like, this is literally one of the great sci-fi. Just a great movie. It's a
Right.
fantastic film, and it's being such a great movie, and then this knockoff, and it's so it pales in comparison
Yeah.
so
What a
much that
disappointment.
it's sad, dude.
Yeah.
But I guess we can lead into the third one if you want.
Yeah. So Escape from the Planet of the Apes. This will
Escape
be
from the Planet of the Apes.
your go here.
Yes, it is. Escape from the Planet of the Apes. Yes, this one is much in the same way that the second one kind of takes a bit of a left turn that kind of makes sense. This kind of takes a right turn, a totally different, takes the franchise in a very different direction that kind of ends up in the same place, but it's very interesting and creative. I'll say that much. But basically, we saw, as you mentioned in the last movie, the planet blows up. It's destroyed. That's it for Planet of the Apes. But turns out that some astronauts have landed on this other planet. Looks like it's actually present day Earth or 1970s Earth. Astronauts come out, but the astronauts this time, they're the apes, but not just any apes, apes we like, some of our
Our
favorites.
friends.
Cornelius is here. Oh, thank you. Thank you for being here. And this other guy that's actually the reason they're there. Basically, the other gentleman, the other gentle ape, whatever we're going to call him, he was a scientist who I guess found the shuttle of Taylor or Brent, one of the guys, and was able to kind of
Yeah.
compile it together just enough to make it work. So they
And
managed.
by the way, just to pause here.
Pause again.
So that guy, Dr. Milo,
Was that Cornelius before?
no, that was our friend Sal Mineo,
Okay. Okay.
who Tim and I reviewed in an old Disney movie called Tonka.
Oh, nice. Oh,
Um,
Tonka. I watched that one.
Tonka,
Your review of that.
yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
But he was also a rebel without a cause. So
Oh,
he's been around a little bit. And he died very young. Actually, this was his last film, was Escape from Planet of the Apes.
no way. Oh, wow. Well,
But yeah. So and he dies in this film.
yeah,
Spoilers as well.
spoilers. He dies in this film, but it's unfortunate too because I liked the character, but he literally is just there to get them there. They managed to get,
Yes.
you know,
Plot device, Doctor.
he is as a character as a plot device. He's one of the number ones for that thing. Jeez, you're here,
Yeah.
you're not. Goodbye. You served your purpose. And he's kind of cool too because he's going to be the level-headed one. He's clearly the guy. He's the one. He's the guy that died first in of Taylor's crew originally. The more
Right.
sensible one that's not arguing. He's the
Right.
member of the crew that's like, let's just, we can't reveal anything about the future. But basically, they escaped right before the planet exploded. So they know that the war was happening, but they don't know exactly what happened. They saw it explode, and somehow the same way, they kind of caught in a rift or something. They end up coming back and traveling back to 1970s Earth. But they just kind of played it off like they're intelligent apes that are from another planet, but they're trying to kind of keep that concealed that they're actually from the future because that might get people worried. There's, of course, some scientists they meet. There's some parallels here that are nice to them, but they're treated much better in this society by people than Taylor was, who was locked up as an animal and beaten and whatever, going to be experimented on. They basically treat these two like celebrities. They love it. They're kind of welcomed by the public, and people take them in, which I actually think is a really nice thing because in science fiction, it's so often like, oh, the aliens come down and oh man, we're afraid of them. But in a weird way, this is one of the friendly alien scenarios. Well, you're from an ape planet. This is really cool. It's
Yeah.
awesome.
It's definitely a nice change of pace from the usual.
Yeah, it's like, and admittedly, there's kind of some debate with some of the government officials if actually they are from another planet or if they are just an advanced race or whatever, a set offshoot of apes, of chimpanzees. But either way, generally, even the president's like, look, public loves them. They seem fine to me. Let's just leave them alone, But
Yeah.
but there's always that one guy, Dan. There's always got to be that one
Every
guy,
time.
almost a Zaius-esque character. Um,
Yes.
though I would say also actually a character with motivations I guess I can understand for sure, but he is definitely more in the camp of like you look at the guy and oh, he's going to be the bad guy. You can just
Right.
tell. He's like the minister of science or whatever. He's on the staff for something for one of the presidential things, but he's the guy that's kind of suspicious of the apes and wants to know more when Zero almost misspeaks about what she did with humans. Like I dissect, I mean, I took care of many what was that? Like he
What did you
catches
say? Yeah.
dissect what could you finish that word? But he's the one guy that's wondering.
And then he
Uh
records her.
he
Isn't he
records
the
her.
one that does that, right?
He does. Eventually, these people kind of put them under investigation because, like, okay, there's some suspicion about where they're actually from, and he actually drugs Zira and tries to get her to
Right.
confess things, and he finds out that okay, actually, they're from the interrogation that yes, he tells them the plot of the first movie. This is eventually what's going to happen, and he's kind of wondering, well, do apes have something to do with that? And like, no, we're pretty sure that you guys just blew yourselves up, and may have been responsible for that too, because we didn't have nuclear weapons. We can tell you that much. So who blew up the Earth? You know, eh.
Right.
So in his mind, he's thinking apes have something to do with it. But even other people, even the president, are like, well, I should we really mess with the future if we can? And there's kind of some interesting combinations about that. And if it's a quest for survival, this guy's basically thinking the way to save humanity and preserve us is he's obsessed with we've got to prevent these apes from having a child because he finds out that Cornelius and Zira are going to have a baby on the way, and he's planning to have it destroyed. But they end up having the baby and breaking out on the run. And when they're locked up, Cornelius doesn't mean to, but he's angry and shoves an orderly and G death, a nice bloody G death,
Yeah,
which you
I
feel so
mean,
bad about. For like these ancillary characters, like you're
complete,
like no,
and it was a complete accident.
but
Um,
it's just public enemy number one. The apes
right,
they
of
are violent
course.
apes that are gonna attack humanity, and so you can see how this is gonna spin. They're on the run, but thankfully the two scientists that were friends with them, of course, are like, "We'll get you somewhere safe," and then they get them to the zoo run by Khan himself, Ricardo
Yep.
Montalban, one of Dan's top five apes characters for
I
sure.
mean, he is one of the greats. He from Naked Gun to Khan to Fantasy
Yeah,
Island. I
Fantasy
mean,
Island, yeah.
he is a top 70s and 80s actor
And also based
in my
upon
mind.
I think you're right. Based upon the few interviews I've seen from him too, he seems like a real professional, hardcore actor, but also like the sweetest guy. Like he seems like he was a really nice person from what I can gather.
Yeah, seemed to be
Uh,
very nice. He always got work, up until he died. I mean, he was a Family Guy. He
mhm.
was quite the man.
But I'll tell you something kind of funny though. Um, I'll tell you two things. I for some reason, some things just don't click, and you forget things, and you get little surprises. I completely forgot he was even in these.
Is that
because
right?
because obviously Space Seed and Wrath of Khan, of course I like Ricardo Montalban for that, but he's also in some of the I
Wow.
remembered he's basically going to try and give them some refuge as this running this zoo. And
Yeah.
he also has, how every movie has at least one iconic line, and in the trailers they had him say, you want me to risk my life for some fugitive apes? And of course in the film, like, yes, that sounds great, like, yeah, because he's all about animal rights and stuff. Like, great character. I love this
Yes.
guy. But unfortunately, the government's onto them and say we're going to find every zoo, every menagerie, whatever we can. So they've got to be on the run, uh, and they are on the run. And well, unfortunately, they seem like they might get away. They're hiding out on a ship in a dock, which I'm pretty sure was used in one of the Dirty Harry movies. It looks like uh,
I could see that.
yeah, it
Yeah.
was like there's a shootout on a ship. I feel like it's the same boat. Wouldn't surprise me. But yeah, the minister government guy tracks him down, and man, Dan, yeah, spoilers. He shoots Cornelius and Zira. They do not get out of this alive. They get a bloody death, but not before Cornelius takes him out too. And we see the baby dead, and they pan out as the helicopter's coming in. The woman's crying. Great, great,
Harrowing
uplifting
scene.
Planet of the Apes people. Yay! Come
Yeah.
to. Once again, really uplifting stuff. But then
Murder a baby.
murder a baby. This is some dark stuff. Cut over to the zoo again. Ah, there was a baby chimpanzee that was born in Montalban Zoo, which it turns out they switched, and the baby of Zira and Cornelius has survived under Khan's care, and that's the movie. Hmm.
Under Khan's care.
Khan and a chimp, Ben, they call it. You'd watch
Yeah,
that.
I get it. Listen, that was ape movies were all the rage back in the day. Wasn't it with Clint Eastwood? They had the Any Which Way But Loose with the ape.
Yeah,
All
pretty
right,
much.
look,
But yeah,
this is my second favorite
mhm.
of all the five films.
As it is, as it is mine probably. I think this is the one that is pretty much in the same way the second one is pretty much universally considered the worst. This is probably considered the best sequel for most people.
Yeah.
Which is
So
interesting because
why
it's
is
like
that? Let's talk about it.
I'd love to pick your brain on that. Because I remember you were like, "What?" when this happened, and I think that in all honesty, the thing about this one is that since the other one was like mostly a really crappy carbon copy with a few nice ideas, this is like a totally original, completely different idea. This is what a good sequel does. It's.
Yes.
So I
Um,
think that's the short answer.
I think by taking the timeline and putting it in the present day, they've actually come up with some really good, I think, reasons for doing that.
Hmm.
One, obviously, to stay consistent with the story that they blew up the planet,
Budget.
but right, more importantly, from a budgetary standpoint, they have right much less makeup, obviously, because there's really only a couple of gorillas or apes, three,
Chimpanzees.
I would say,
Mhm.
that they need, and one of them gets killed off pretty early.
Yep.
So for the most part, and also because it's set in present day 70s, the cars are the same, and the buildings are the same, and everything, they don't have to fiddle with the technology at all. So from that standpoint, it makes sense. But because the story is so strong,
It's a good story. Yeah.
it doesn't really hurt the integrity of the project at all.
No. No.
I really enjoyed all of the interactions between Cornelius and Zira.
Hmm.
I think we get a much fuller picture of them in this movie. Like in the first one, we know they're good, we know they're cool.
Hmm.
Second one, they're barely in,
Hmm.
which we talked about. Here, I mean, they're the stars of the movie,
Oh yeah, absolutely.
you know, and that's unexpected because Heston obviously was such an important part of the first movie that they had to bring him back a little bit for round two. So the fact that he's not in it, or any human that we've ever seen before this movie,
Nope.
it doesn't matter
No, it's
because the
interesting
story's so
because
strong.
you're right. The story is strong, and I would say, in a way, I mean this also kind of I think it's interesting how excellent the first movie is, but it is still centric on, of course, the man in the Planet of the Apes Twilight Zone esque scenario. But then
Mm-hmm.
this franchise really does become more about the apes, and this is really where that begins, and kind of their journey as a people in relation to man. And I agree. I think it's interesting because Cornelius and Zira, even in the first movie, they're so great. I think you will talk about a little
Yeah,
more, but for me, Cornelius and Zira are like the best characters in the first movie. I always love Cornelius because he's just kind of like grumbling all the time. But I think you like Zira more. But in the first movie, they're
yeah,
so well established. But in this one, we get so much more of that, and you really feel for their relationship, their intimacy, their issues. Once again, how Cornelius is like, please, don't be the strong woman, keep your mouth shut. But Zira, unfortunately, is kind of stubborn that way and doesn't want to be talked down to her. And, she can be obstinate in that way. And that's kind of her downfall in a sense, which is unfortunate. But they seem like such believable people. And we really see their anger, which I think they actually, Roddy McDowell does such a great job with Cornelius, the later Caesar, just really portraying that anger in that situation, like defending his wife and
yeah,
baby, where he murders that guy. I mean, this is an example of just great storytelling and filmmaking, with the acting and the effect, everything, because a guy in essentially a monkey suit murdering another person shouldn't come off so dramatic and make me kind of gasp, but like
hmm
it really does. Like you're like you understand why he did it, and it's just like, oh, like it's so
well, look,
uncomfortable, you know.
this goes back to something that I say about even like cartoon shows or whatever. Like Homer Simpson to us is a real person.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. That's
You
why
know
he's
what I
so
mean?
great. Yeah.
And because over the course of now three movies, we've seen these apes be real characters, and do human things, whatever, because that's the whole bit.
But they're people.
um
Yeah.
but essentially they're not apes, they're people,
Yeah.
as we know them,
Yeah.
and because of that, and because of how strongly written they are, it doesn't matter that it's a guy in an ape suit with some ape makeup,
But
etc.
some good made makeup,
And
but
and
still,
and look, we've extolled the virtues here of Roddy McDowall, but
we
let's
have.
talk for a second about Kim Hunter.
Yes, 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 yes. She's your
Kim
favorite,
Hunter
right?
as I'm sorry,
Zero's your favorite, right?
Zira actually probably is my favorite in the entire series.
Okay, go
I
ahead.
would agree with that. Now, first of all, the actress, so Kim Hunter, Academy Award winner
Oh, okay.
for one of the most famous roles in early cinema, another movie that was made into a Simpsons musical play.
Okay.
She won an Academy Award for playing Stella in A Streetcar Named Desire,
That's on the list, man. Gotta see it.
right? Which I've never seen either. But
Classic
this
Simpsons.
is this another Simpsons again. But this shows how strong the material is, that about 15 years after she won an Oscar for one of the iconic roles,
Of
of
theater, yeah.
women in early cinema history, she was like, you know what, I'm going to sign on for this movie and dress up like an ape and da 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 da. And it just, look, maybe she wasn't doing a lot of work at the time, but the point is, she's a great, great character
She sells it, man.
as Dr. Zira. And I think the reason she's my favorite is because of this third movie and the pregnancy storyline.
Mm.
And look, that goes along with Cornelius as well, because like you said, he is a very, very attentive husband, attentive, father to be, the whole bit. Um, but I think they work in tandem. So we've talked a lot about Roddy McDowall. I just want to give Kim Hunter the proper respect as well, because she does a great job in these three movies.
No,
She doesn't go on to the other movies like McDowell does, but
spoilers. Yeah,
well, we
but
said it already.
maybe, but no, you're right. They all know, but you're right. Absolutely. Thank you for giving her a shout out because she does do an excellent job as well.
Mhm.
She really does. They're both really great characters that they work well
and,
together.
and like you mentioned in, I think the first one,
Mhm.
it's not easy to emote like a normal, actor outside of a costume when you're in that makeup and that those heavy costumes and all of that. And they do, both of them do such a good job of really letting us feel the emotions of these characters and the weight of, okay, well, this may exterminate our entire race, this, that, and the other thing. And yeah, I really, I thought that the plot line for this was just really well done.
Yeah, this seemed like your kind of thing, to be honest.
Yeah.
You like a good time travel sort of question too. Uh,
Yep.
how did you feel about the villain anyway? The agent guy, actually.
Well,
I liked
I
him.
think I think he did what he needed to do. He was fine. I don't think he's very fleshed out, other than must stop the apes, and this nonsense now. Apes don't talk. Let's make sure they stay that way for the rest of the time. Um, he was fine. I liked, from a story perspective, I liked some of the things they had him do.
Mhm.
Like they made him real scummy, when he drugged her and
Yeah.
when he was recording her and this
Dissect,
and that,
dissect, dissect. Yeah,
So, yeah, he's a well written character in the things that they had him do, but he's not a very well defined character.
true. You're not really entirely sure like what he thinks or wants exactly.
Right, right.
Kind of mysterious.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess I'll before you talk about the fourth one, we'll grade it, and I'll have a little thing to say to lead into it that we didn't mention. But
Oh,
that
okay.
but that but that's fine because we didn't mention it, but it'll work fine. So um I don't know, man. Like this is clearly the one you think is second best. I would agree with that.
Yeah.
I still don't think it's like see, like I think the first movie is so good. I don't know if I think it's like really that caliber and
No,
it's
it's
like
okay.
it's
I'll make it easy for you. I'll give you my grade first,
that'll make it easier because I'm like you
as we've been doing.
okay.
I think this movie is a very solid B plus.
That's what I was thinking. I was like,
Yeah.
this doesn't seem like A range to me because there's, there's some goofy little bits here and there, and and I know it's one of those things that's completely just for convenience, but oh yeah, the scientist ape guy totally could get all the stuff together in like a couple weeks and make it where okay, sure, whatever, but
Yeah.
like I
This
mean,
is a
you
Look,
know,
this is a movie of some convenience
sure, but you could say the
it,
same thing about
about
the other
many
ones,
things.
and
But yes,
that's what
it's very convenient that the ape at Khan's
born at the same
circus
time.
just had a baby. Okay, we
Yeah,
got it.
okay, yeah,
But
exactly.
yes,
But it's
many movies have convenience
yeah,
as a main
and
selling feature.
that's it's fiction. I don't really nitpick that stuff too much. But my point is, it just
Yes,
the first one's so elevated, even just with all the different the effects and the epic nature of the story and the score and Heston. You know, there's a lot that whole opening bit in the wasteland, like cinematography. You get it. You know,
yes,
it's not quite the same, but I think that it does a lot with a little, and it's still very smart. It's still very
yeah,
smart and much more consistent. But before you lead into the fourth one, uh, the one thing that kind of is interesting each movie that I learned as we were kind of watching them again is that they kind of expand more on the timeline and the ape society and history and lore more. And in this movie, Cornelius actually does kind of drop that. In addition, I guess this must have been in the scripture or something of that Dr. Zayas was talking about, but man originally enslaved apes after this big plague that kills all the dogs and cats. They take them as pets, just I guess as convenience for that because they're popular. I mean, I guess if you could have it accessible, but then they find, oh, they could domesticate them, train them, and then they end up kind of enslaving them. And there might have been some kind of ape rebellion. So, interesting. But now
yeah.
take it to you now, Dan.
So they've talked about that. They've basically set up what will become the conquest of the apes.
Conquest of the planet of
So
the apes. Dun,
these
dun,
are
dun.
all a year apart. So the first one was 68, and then they
Pump them
skipped a
out.
year, but then it's 70, 71, 72, 73. So
Let's
they
do
were
it.
just
Bam,
pumping,
bam.
pumping them out. So this is the closest to the Franco movie.
Hmm. Yep.
This because the Franco movie, which was the only one I had seen when it came out,
This is the Franco.
this is the Franco. This that movie revolves around an ape named Caesar,
Hmm.
which, as we find out in this particular film, The Conquest, that Caesar is the son of Cornelius and Kira,
Hmm.
and the rising up. Da, 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 da. In fact, is the first Franco Rise of the Apes? It is.
I
It's
always get that
Rise.
confused
They're
about.
all the same. It's Rise, Dawn, and War.
I
Um,
thought what was the anyway.
but they could they're all interchangeable. They
Yeah,
maybe rise in all of them.
yeah. They all fight in
And they
all of them.
and they
They all
have
right.
war in all of them. But
I hate
anyway,
that stuff. Yeah.
so
Anyway.
it's so stupid. So well, that's why it's easy to call them the Franco movies and the original five. And then because if you say Conquest of the Planet of the Apes, I don't know what number that is.
They.
They're trying to conquest all of them. I don't know what that means.
It's
Anyway,
metaphorical, Dan.
I understand, but all right. So this one, time frame wise, does jump because of course we need baby Caesar to now be uh an adult of sorts. So this jumps about 20 years into the future. It's 1991, and 83 is when they had the big cats and dogs wipe out. So the government has now taken the apes as pets, like you mentioned, Joe. Basically, what they talked about in number three is coming true.
Oh,
Um,
also, not to pause a second. Like I said,
yes,
every one of these has an iconic line, and this one was, "Are you telling me ape management is in the hands of the apes?" Okay, continue.
I thought the big catchphrase for this would be an ape shouting no.
Also,
That's right. That's
that's
pretty
also
classic.
also
But anyway, so Caesar knows that he is not to basically out himself. He needs to shut his mouth and
you
this
know,
and that.
low key.
But as a result, we see Armando, the great Montalban, come back. He's still alive. He's still the handler or whatever you want to say
Keeper.
of Caesar, the keeper of Caesar. Um,
Father,
so,
basically.
I'm sorry.
Father, basically raised him.
Yeah, essentially, yeah, because of course his real father's dead. So,
His dad.
so Khan raises him as his own, um, and so Caesar now is at this in this new city where the circus is going to go and sees apes being slaves essentially and performing all
Yeah.
of these different things that is not cool, and
Mhm.
so he's real mad. So he sneaks into one of the cages that they're going to take the apes, and he's like, look, I'm going to take charge. Like, listen, guys. So he does reveal to the other apes that, yes, I can talk. these are the apes you're looking for, kind of thing. Pre-Star Wars though,
A little
but
bit,
still,
a little bit.
that was sort of the
Well,
thread.
believe it or not, Star Wars, borrowed from a lot of stuff. If you might not have heard.
Well, look, that's a conversation. That's a conversation for another day.
Sure.
But at the same time, the government is now looking for Caesar. They don't know his name necessarily, but they're like, look, we know there's this ape that can talk. We don't know who he is, so they question Montalban. They take him in, they torture him a little bit. He won't say anything. He ends up killing himself.
Your favorite part.
That was very sad and
Yeah.
unexpected. I didn't care for that.
Yeah.
But yes, he assumed that his circus ape is really the talking ape from Cornelius and Kira. So anyway, they eventually narrow it down and think that Caesar is the one. He does confide in one of the security guards at this plant where they're all working, and they basically figure it out because he stowed away in that crate, and they're like, well, we had this many apes on board and this many landed, so what gives? How do you have extra apes? So they narrowed it down to him, sort of find him, attack him, torture him, give him the electricity. He feigns being dead so that he can eventually escape, which
the guy helps him.
Worst coroner ever, by the way, that says, he's dead.
Must be dead.
You fried him. He ain't moving. Bye.
Not going to check a pulse or anything.
Lunchtime. Yeah, like he just...
You need a sandwich, man. Ooh, where's my stuff?
Stupid. But yes, because of the security guard that he confided in, I don't know if he's a security guard, but whatever.
He was like one of the heads of the ape management people. Yeah.
Yeah. But he was like lying though to the other people, like, oh yeah, Caesar's not back yet. I don't know where he is.
I sent him on an errand. I haven't heard from him.
Right, but he was right there, so Caesar knew he could trust him.
That was good.
But yeah, so as he's on the electricity, he kind of gives him a signal. Caesar, fakes death, whatever. So then the uprising starts, and they basically, shout no to the people. They start this literal war with the humans. They strengthen in numbers. All the apes come gather and start the war. A lot of fighting, a lot of fires.
Yep.
Flamethrower and that's it. Tonight we have seen the birth of the Planet of the Apes, they say.
Aha.
Yeah. So that movie ends with some death and destruction.
Yeah, a little bit. Once again, uplifting.
Once again, another uplifter. So that's pretty much what happens in this movie.
Yeah. I'll tell you something, Dan. Kind of always previously and still after watching all these, I told you that I thought the third movie is probably the best sequel. But this one's always kind of been up there with it for me, and this one is honestly my favorite of the sequels. This is the one
Is that right?
Yep, I really like this one.
Okay, well, let's talk about why.
Well,
because I'll tell you right now, we can spoil grades, or we can not spoil grades. This one though, for me, is about the same. It is right up there for me. It's not better than the third, but I think this one's right about on that same level for me.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's probably right about there, and it's the
and
one
part
that
of it may be that I love the Franco version as well.
Well, and that's and I think that it's very interesting and smart that I remember watching the Franco one. I'm like, they're basically doing Conquest, but they're kind of changing some things, obviously, but it's kind of it's basically the same movie in a lot of ways. This is the one.
And before we continue with the why, I think it's very telling how strong this movie is, the fourth of a series,
and it's still like
that when they decided to reboot it, instead of going off the first one, which would have been easy, but of course Burton probably did that
failed,
already. And failed. But to take the fourth of a series and make that the linchpin of your new franchise, that's bold.
That's very bold, and you're right. I actually think that does speak very well to this movie, because how many movies could you say that about? The fourth
I
movie,
can't think of any.
They use that as the starting point, but the thing is, because it's a timeline thing, if they start at the beginning without the time travel element, it kind of is the beginning of
Right.
that story in a way. So you're right.
Yeah.
That is true. Also,
There's a little bit of a different motivation in that one, which,
well,
look, we're going to talk about all the
yeah,
Francos in another
no,
video, but
we'll talk
yeah,
about it. But I will say with the Franco one, I do appreciate how it's a great example of it's the same story, but very different at the same time.
quite different.
It's interesting,
The
but
motivation is different. Everything's different.
the surrounding plot, because obviously the apes aren't quite as advanced in that one, and they're not
Yeah.
slaves, but a lot of the same themes still kind of come up. It's
Yeah.
interesting. But I guess
Yeah.
a bit
Tonally, it's the same.
tonally it's very similar. It's very
Yeah.
dark. A lot of, once again, some powerful ideas. I think that is another thing I like about all these movies and great sci-fi is gets you thinking, and it's dealing with some heavy stuff. And this one
Right.
is, in some ways, this one's like the heaviest because we're straight up dealing with the concept of slavery and this society, and we're seeing kind of a dystopian, like a classic 70s sci-fi. You got like the Logan's Run, where you got different elements of society, and just the humanity obviously is like kind of entering into this corporate class divide with obviously like some SS, Nazi, fascist overtones to it. So
Right.
so the humans really are not showing their best here, and yeah, I think if I could summarize why I like the most, I think it's because it does something, for me, that it's interesting that we do kind of have this turn in the franchise where we're sort of horrified that we're on the planet of the apes originally and what happened to mankind, but in a weird way it's kind of a commentary on what mankind does and sort of vilifies them, kind of beginning with the third movie, and then it continues really forward with what they do with their self-destructive nature, and the apes are almost transformed into the heroes of the story. And I think that I'm really impressed by how well they do the oppression of that, and you really kind of are rooting for the apes. And I think around that,
I
it's
sure was.
I think a lot of it's just the atmosphere. The movie is dark, and literally there's a lot of darkness, a lot of shadows, a lot of suspense of being on the run, and you have a lot of situations where you don't know what's going to happen to Armando when he's against the ropes being tortured. There's a lot of intense, uncomfortable moments. I mean, Caesar's being tortured. That scene where he gets right up with basically the got the mayor of the city or whatever, has him pick his slave name, and he has to like conceal it's just
Hate
some
it.
there's some really intense moments where you're always kind of on edge for Caesar to get out of this alive. And I think there's elements of that are in the other movies, but I think it's this one guy, this one ape, against the world basically, and he doesn't have many friends. His father figure, interestingly enough a human, does die trying to save him. That's an intense moment. This one just has a lot of emotional punches because you care about the characters, and specifically I think that's all centered really heavily on Roddy McDowall's portrayal of Caesar. Just he really, I mean, if we liked him as Cornelius, he really gets to push the emotions and the tension and the fear, and especially the anger. Once again, you believe it. And really just his monologue at the end, I forgot about how good it was about, like, I'm not really a man, why should I care about humans, why should I maintain the peace? and
Yeah.
and then there's that when he's talking to the guy, the one human, trying to get through to him. It's almost, once again, we're echoing the parallels of this whole franchise and what we see in the first movie, which sort of in the last movie, which sort of ties back to the first movie and the second movie. It's really cool how they managed to connect it all together. But there's that character moment where if I'm going to start a new world, I can, or am I going to just emulate the worst aspects of the humans and become like them? No, I'll maybe I can try to keep the peace, just keep the humans in line. So it's like his transformation and growth from being this kid who's basically on the run and on the verge of death or torture the whole time to being the the leader of this rebel group who is essentially the guy on top to start the Planet of the Apes is he's what I'm saying, man. It's kind of powerful stuff. I don't know. I really like
It's
this
very
movie.
powerful. And yeah, look, I think you basically hit on why this movie, and to some degrees, the third one too,
Yeah.
this resonates so well. It's because the shift in apes are bad, F them. Oh my God, they did this to Earth, they did this to humans, da, 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 da. But then the third one, um, because of Cornelius and Kira so much,
And Zero, yeah.
they just become so human. and that carries on exponentially in the fourth one and even the fifth one, really.
Mhm.
But yeah, I mean, we're really seeing such parallels, and here it, and we see that not all humans are bad. We see obviously that one guy that was helping out. Montalban is still in it,
Mhm.
so that we see some good things about humanity, but by and large, right, the apes have now become the downtrodden, the lower class of the world, and you do root for them. You want to see them literally rise up, Franco name again. And yeah, I think that's why this movie specifically in the series has such an interesting element to it, because in that first movie you never would have even thought that that would be something that you as the viewer
Yeah,
wanted.
from movie 1 to 4, like it goes, this series goes where wacky different directions, but it's
Yeah,
somehow thematically it all kind of ends up working out surprisingly well. Even, and we'll talk about it with the fifth one, but even the second one, which seems kind of like messy and weird, they still tie in the second one. It's
yeah,
interesting. It's interesting, man.
yeah.
Um,
So I think a lot of this movie, because of the nighttime scenes
mhm.
and the riots,
Oh,
a
the
lot
riot
of
seems so real, man. It seemed like a
well,
real
it
riot.
it all seemed very very real, but it was very very dark.
True.
Obviously lighting rigs were a bit more primitive in the 70s.
Hmm.
So a lot of those end sort of sequences were a little dark from my taste. But yeah, I mean, it's interesting to sort of reflect back. Uh, this is now almost 50 years old.
Yeah.
When I think about, some of the maybe protests that we've seen in the last year or two in this country, it's like, boy, that's, I think, as a sci-fi uber fan yourself, I think would have to agree. That's one of the best things about sci-fi, is that it is so timeless in so many ways, because it really reflects humanity
Hmm.
as opposed to a time period.
Yeah.
And I'm sure in 1970, what was it, 72, right? This one,
Yeah. There was
yeah,
some
in
riots.
72, I'm sure they couldn't have imagined, oh well, these exact issues would be so relevant. And look, it's why it makes sense that the Franco one redid this one too, because like 40, 50 years on, we're still having a lot of similar issues that you can see in the world, in this country, whatever.
Hmm.
And it makes it so relevant, and you don't expect that from a movie from 1972.
No, you're right. That's definitely a great element of science fiction, and I'm sure that they were obviously commenting on civil rights and on different
Yeah,
elements of racism, clearly. But yeah, it's sad, but also poignant that in a way it's kind of at least a good thing about the movie is that it still has its uses to commentate to comment on just elements of society and problems we have today that you can still reflect on and say, okay, there was this discussion reflected in art, in science fiction, entertainment. It's there too, and they were talking about it then, and it's maybe prevalent more so now. But yeah, it's a movie that you could still watch, and I think those themes would resonate as being still significant and moving. With
yeah,
especially
absolutely.
with a lot of performances, I agree. I guess I do agree that yeah, some of the nighttime shots, especially with the riot, were dark, but
It's a little unfortunate.
it's a little unfortunate, but the thing that doesn't bother me about it is that that's kind of what added to the realism. Because if it was like some old documentary style, it looks like an old rig of a camera crew recording
Right,
a riot
right.
in the 70s. I'm like, that's kind of what it would look like. So I thought it kind of fit with what they were going for. I thought it
Yeah.
added to the mood, but yeah, no, I agree though. They are dark.
Yeah, dark in all senses of the word, I would say.
Maybe,
How did
yeah.
you feel about Montalban's exit from the series?
Unfortunate. I thought it was a very sad, shocking scene. Though it does border perhaps on unintentional comedy because he jumps out the window and quick cut, and I'm like, what the f? Like,
It
I
was a little odd,
like it was like no,
one
no,
might
and
say.
then and it was just like there's the crash, he jumps out, and then there's like a boom, like quick blurry thing, and I'm like, what? So it was a little jarring, but it was I mostly just thought it was messed up. For the most part,
Yeah.
I thought it was pretty intense and sad, but some weird. editing there. I don't know.
Now, I would like to say something too, before we grade it and move on,
Mhm.
because of course I'm all about the background of these things. So this
Sure.
one actually did have a different ending originally,
What?
where they straight up kill the governor.
That would have
And
been pretty cool, actually. I don't
I,
know.
what's funny is I wouldn't have minded it, to be honest.
Yeah, he was horrible, but then he would have, but
Horrible.
then he would have gone to the dark side. Not to quote Star Wars again, he would have
Well,
given into
and
his hate.
that's sort of, well, okay.
Give in to your hate,
that's
Caesar.
that's sort of the problem. So basically, the test audiences didn't care for that, and they were like, "Look,
All right,
let's."
all right. Let me ask. Let
So
me.
they reworked the final speech.
Okay, I do love the final speech, but I do have to
Yeah.
ask though. So officially, if Dan was writing or directing or producing this or overseeing this movie, the Benzing cut of Conquest would include him shooting the governor in the face.
Well, look, my issue is,
The governor was straight evil,
in
bro.
in my mind, a lot of these movies and TV shows, and we see it even watching like the OC and stuff. I'm pretty like black and white on something. If I'm,
You are
I'm that guy. I want him dead. I don't have any like. I don't think
compunctions.
about like, well, maybe cinematically it would be more, more interesting if this person
Well,
lived
well,
and
look,
did something. I just want anybody that's pure evil. I'm just like, they deserve to die
look,
now.
look. I'll be
Yeah, if
honest,
Caesar killed
but
him, I would have been fine with it.
I no, and I appreciate that you can analyze it and respect it, but I think that shows a good thing how invested you get in the characters. Like, yeah, kill the bad guy. Yeah, I
That
get
is
it.
true.
I totally get it. That you want that
That is
catharsis,
true.
and
Well, and but by the same accord, I also get very emotionally attached to the good guys. So when I see
as you would.
somebody torturing and trying to kill Caesar,
Mm.
who, whose lineage I've enjoyed now for the last 6 hours I was watching the movies, yeah, I get, I take it personally, and I'm like, yeah, dude, that guy deserved to die,
That's awesome.
whatever. So,
But
so I don't know. Apparently, the Blu-ray does have the original ending. The
the
version I have is on DVD, so I don't know if I have it, but
Okay. Well,
um,
I will say that
anyway.
that might speak into. Okay. Well, actually, I don't know if that's gonna be a problem because as we were watching it, my buddy Troll, I think he did, I think, end up liking this one, especially after he watched the next one. I think in retrospect, he
Yeah,
was like, okay, that one was actually pretty good, but he was like the thing that was kind of frustrating for him was that the humans are like so evil and self-defeating. Like they know about the potential of the apes doing this. Why would you not only train them and adopt them into the society, but also be so horrible to them? Like they're asking for it like so
yeah.
much. It's like they're aware, they're very self-aware and self-defeating, but also incredibly evil. It's like, is it a bit much? Like, is it? I mean, I
It
liked it,
might
but
it might be a bit much for some.
you were okay with the Nazis.
Well, I sort of actually, again, with the current day parallels,
Uh-oh.
I bought it. I could see it.
Well, all right. Well, maybe that just made him uncomfortable. But hey, look, I like a good evil bad. I like the fact that they were like, we know this is a potential thing, but we're not going to learn from our mistakes. So thematically, it's still in line with the rest of the series. But okay,
Yeah,
I'm fine. I'm kind of think that's great. It didn't bother you much. Um, but yeah, man, I like this one. I don't think it's quite as good maybe as the last one, but I could easily see it giving the same grade for me. I think I'll leave it with a B now, but it could give it a B plus. It's really right up there for me.
yeah. I teeter for sure on a B or a B plus for this. I agree. It's probably not quite as strong as the third movie, but I think there are a lot of really interesting themes here. Um,
Hmm.
I can agree with you on a B, I guess. I feel like I gave the Franco one a B plus, and I must admit, comparing them side by side, I probably do enjoy the Franco one a little bit more.
Which I could probably agree with. I'd have to watch it
Um,
again.
I like the dementia plot with John Lithgow,
And
uh, and all of that.
I think Caesar is obviously he's different in some ways, but Andy Serkis does such a great job with him too.
Circus is obviously one of the best.
Mhm.
I think we'll be singing his praises a lot when we do the Francos here.
He'll be the McDowell of the
Um,
Francos, really.
yes,
It's the
yeah,
circus one.
actually.
He's the circus.
Yeah, I would say I would say a B is probably very acceptable for this movie.
Okay. Yeah. So
Now the
B,
fifth
but
one.
now now the fifth one, which is this one? Is this Battle for the Planet of the Apes?
This is called The Battle for the Planet of the
See,
Apes.
this is where I start, and I'll admit this probably says something right here, Dan. I was not 100% on the title, and even as I'm trying to recall it, this is the one that even though I just watched it not that long ago, I'm struggling. So here's the thing.
Okay.
I can tell you, but I will also prelude this with of all the Planet of the Apes movies, as I said, I know the second one's a mess, but for entertainment value, I would watch all the other ones again. I think I saw this one once, and I'm like, okay.
All right. Well, look.
Not to spoil anything here, but
Let's keep in mind a couple of things.
you telling me? Okay,
Number one, we were now 7
okay,
hours deep
okay. Yes, thank
into
you.
the
All right,
apes.
thank you for the caveat, and that's why I was like, I might give the last one a B plus because the truth is this: we watched them all in one night, which I'll never do again. That was too many hours, and one that was too much. Like it was a great idea, Dan, but I'll be honest,
Thank you.
I hated I felt like I hated that movie because I was so tired. I was like,
Look, I have never ever done that much sitting in a theater at once. Now, yes, between each one, we took bathroom breaks, we took refill breaks. I had to switch out the DVDs, whatever. But
it was more of an energy thing for me.
for the most part, we were there for about 9.5 hours straight.
Mm-hmm.
I will probably never do that again either. People do it though. AMC holds those.
Look,
Every time I do Avengers movie, AMC holds the MCU marathons. You watch 28 hours in a row, whatever. Okay, couldn't do it.
Look,
Couldn't do it.
I might do
But
Lord of the Rings or something, but
maybe
like
Lord of the Rings.
that's like
about
that's
10
the only
hours.
thing I can think of. Maybe, but because I think that's a different thing.
But
But
look, I was okay with the
okay,
length of
okay,
this. I don't think I'll ever do it again, but I was all right with watching all these in a row because
no,
I was having a lot of
Dan,
fun with it.
Dan, I'm glad we did it. I had a good time, but I'm just
Yeah.
saying by the end I was feeling it.
Well, I just want to remind you of that before you are too hard on this movie.
before I blast this movie. No,
I don't think this movie is great.
no.
It's
Here.
certainly
L-
in line with 2 as being the
the-
lesser of the series.
I'll let you know based upon my memory. It was like I think the second one's the worst, but I really didn't like this one that much.
This is sort of a combo of 2 and 3 of the Francos.
It is. It is, and this is kind of like this would be the
Dawn
third
and War.
of War. So yeah, this is kind
Right.
of in line with what the Francos would do, continuing that
Yeah.
story. So basically, in a lot of ways, though, it's kind of the simplest synopsis. It's really just Caesar is trying to kind of maintain the society of apes and humans together, where humans are kind of second class citizens, but not treated as badly theoretically, but there is still some issues. We have this great scene where the human teacher, is trying to teach the apes how to read, and there's this gorilla that gets angry because he says no when he did it wrong, and that you can't say no to apes because that was
Mhm.
like the word to enslave them. They
That's their trigger.
they weren't allowed to say. They were always told no, and they were never allowed to refuse. So no, I refuse. So you can't ever say that to an ape, which I think is just logistically impossible to
It
enforce.
just doesn't make any
I'm
sense.
like,
I mean, I guess if you're conditioned from birth to not say the word no
you'll be a
ever,
lot less
okay,
likely to do
but
it. But like, what about all the people that were still alive? They're going to slip up and get executed. So
no, they're all dead
I
now.
think he's a little. Yeah, that's why there are too
They,
many.
they,
Anyway,
they killed him already.
yeah, they killed them already. But anyway, Caesar's doing his best. He's got this great orangutan advisor, Dr. Zayas 2, I call him, Dr. Yayas or whatever we
Yeah,
call
actually, yeah.
him. He's nice. He's the wise guy. Basically, and he's saying, "Oh, well, what are we gonna try and do? What will you do? What does an ape do?" And he's the philosophizer of this whole. He's
Yeah.
he's doing the ape bits, but he's nice. He's a much nicer Zayas. I liked him. Uh,
Yeah.
but really, the stand-in of the government guy, his brother is actually not the same character, but he's friends with Caesar now as kind of being like his representative for the
Yeah.
humans. Um, they're just trying to kind of make it work. However, there are a couple problems. One of the problems is there is a possibility of trying to find out what's kind of going on in the old ruins. There might be some knowledge of his parents and what their fears were, and kind of what happened with Cornelius and Zira and the original recordings from the third movie. So he kind of wants to go find out more about what to essentially do based on what his parents did because he doesn't have much knowledge of them. So he wants to go off and do that, but one of the villains from the last movie has been hiding out. It turns out a bunch of the people have been living in the irradiated waste. I guess there was a nuclear war again, and we see that a lot of those people are probably going to be the descendants, or rather the ancestors of the people we see in two, because they're wearing the same outfits. So you can see these are gonna they have the giant bomb that they think about launching.
Right.
So this is the beginning of that society. They're thinking, oh well, you know what? Let's maybe take this opportunity to war to war with Caesar and his apes, because he recognized him. And I love that villain because he's got the collar up and the cape, and I love his advisors like, well, but if you do that, you'll break the peace. But it has been a rather boring 12 years. Like he just is like,
Yeah.
I just want to make war because I'm tired of this. So I thought he was a great villain. He was the most. Do you remember Philip Seymour Hoffman in Mission Impossible 2? The very laid
Yeah.
back,
And
like
three.
I'm just gonna be villainous for what, like he's like that. The most like I'm just gonna do this because whatever. Anyway, he's like I'm gonna make war with the apes. At the same time, there is this gorilla, because of course all the gorillas are bad now since two on. They're all militaristic. They're all the bad guys. So they're like, no, we want to actually not live in peace with the humans. We want to exterminate them. I want to challenge Caesar, but there's that rule that we're not going to be like humans. The law is no ape can ever kill an ape, but this gorilla is planning kind of an insurgence, and Caesar's son, because he's married and has a kid now, his son actually is kind of listening into this plot and might have discovered it, and the gorilla goes after him and ends up kind of tracking him down on this tree, and then just kind of knocks the branch down with the sword, and tree falls and he kills Caesar's son. Meanwhile, all this is going down. There's this big battle where the evil humans are invading, and there's this war going on, and all these explosions, and oh no, what's going to happen? And then it all kind of culminates with most of the apes being fine somehow, by being
Yeah, that
plus
was kind of weird.
kind of with all the explosions. But anyway, Caesar does win that battle, but he has to obviously reckon with what happened to his son, and then finds out, oh, the gorilla guy did it. How am I going to resolve this? And there's this really long standoff of we're not really sure what Caesar's going to do, because like this is the foundation of the society is we don't want to be like humans, we don't want to fight amongst ourselves, we want to have a peaceful society, we can be better than this. And this is proof that didn't happen. And so he's not really even sure how he's going to exact justice, because this is a new thing. And then he fights and kind of literally climbs and slowly chases the gorilla guy who's afraid of him, and kind of sort of accidentally falls to his death. And well, they're like, well, that's the beginning of like the cycle of murder. And so it's theoretically kind of bleak, but then they kind of cut away and say no, like essentially we're a lot more like humans than we'd like to admit, but we're going to try to make this work, live peacefully. And they cut away. The lawgiver, who would have been like sort of like the prominent figure from the scripture that they hinted at in the first movie, is this guy we see, but he's singing the praises of Caesar. And you see human kids and ape kids together in a society that I guess is kind of working, trying to learn to live together peacefully. And that is Planet of the Apes series
Well,
done.
look, you remembered a lot more than I did from that fifth
it,
movie.
it, it came up as I was remembering, like, oh yeah, this happened, yeah.
But I will say it is, as you sort of mentioned there with the apes and the human children, it is the only one of the five that ends on any kind of an upbeat or positive note.
Thankfully, so it's like, so it makes it
And,
feel like the whole thing
yeah,
was this journey we led to. And that's one thing I appreciated about, as I noticed, like going on through all the movies with this movie did do the good job of connecting all the movies and acknowledging them as all like a
yeah.
possible future, and they are connected. This will lead to that, but then going its own direction, which is maybe why it has a positive ending. Oh,
And look, the diminishing returns for each film were obvious. And also the budgets kept shrinking. So they had to know this was going to be the last one.
mhm.
So they probably were like, look, let's tie everything together. Let's end on a positive, this
Good.
and that. And so that would be my guess, is that they knew ahead of time about that. But,
Probably.
here's one that most people don't care for.
Hmm.
Our good friends, Siskel and Ebert.
Oh, they weren't fans.
Siskel gave it 1 out of 4.
Ooh.
Ebert gave it 2 out of 4,
Oh,
which I
wow.
think is probably more appropriate. I
Yeah,
think it's
man.
a more average
Yeah, Siskel
Um,
just destroyed this one.
Siskel hated it as always. He said it was very boring.
Eh,
Look, I'm trying to give this one a little bit
benefit of
of a
doubt.
benefit just because we had been sitting there for so many hours watching these movies.
Yeah.
And also, yes, it's just in general not as good as 3 or 4. So it was a little bit of a downer because of that. And yeah, maybe we were a little tired. I was having fun watching it and bantering and everything.
Sure, sure, yeah.
But because of all the banter for this particular movie, I feel like we did probably miss, or at least I did since I had never seen it before, a few of the things that were happening story wise.
Yeah, like I
That
had to
that
recall like the reason he went into the old city was to find those recordings of his parents. That was interesting.
Yeah, I right, yeah, that was actually pretty cool. It was like the rings in
Yeah,
Time
yeah,
Machine
it
2.
was the rings, but it was the tape. Yeah.
Rings all over again, the tape. But so yeah, I think this has some interesting elements to it.
Definitely.
I can appreciate that it does tie everything together. I can also appreciate that there's a few different, not even villains necessarily, but a few different factions
Hmm.
at play because you have the apes that are trying to take over, and then you also have the humans, and that element of it as well. And then of course you have good
Caesar in
old
the mix.
Roddy McDowell, Caesar, as sort of the go between and trying to keep the peace and whatever. I think it's got some interesting things going on.
Got a lot going
Uh,
on. Yeah.
which is why I can't say this is a bad movie.
Okay.
Um, I think I would rather watch this one again than
Okay.
two.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
However,
Hmm.
if I watched one and the last 40 minutes of two, that's better to me than five, because I think the last part of two is really interesting, like we talked about with all the human and the telepathy and this and that. But this does tie everything together.
Hmm.
I think this is one of these movies where if you didn't see the others,
Oh yeah.
I think you'd be very, very lost.
No, I will say one thing about this is that yeah, if you were not a Planet of the Apes devotee fan, this is not the
Right.
movie for you. If you were committed, don't come into the fifth Planet of the Apes movie because you're gonna miss
Yeah.
so much. Yeah. You're gonna miss.
Whereas you could honestly make the case, like, since three sort of reignites the
It's
timeline,
like starts over a little bit.
you could actually, I think, go into three not having seen the other two.
Or
And maybe you wouldn't have as much association with Cornelius and Kira, but I think you probably could go into that movie without seeing the other two
and I think you could
and
also
enjoy
maybe
it.
say the same thing for four a bit too, because we don't really see
Probably,
Cornelius and Zero. It kind of almost feels like its own movie. So maybe that's another one of
because
the.
again, they're sort of restarting it. Like
Mhm.
Cornelius and Kira are dead. You've got Caesar now starting. Obviously the Franco series started there. So yeah, I mean, I think, and then two, since it's a carbon copy at the beginning of one, you don't really need to see one either because two is the same beginning,
It'd be a shame if you
essentially.
missed it though.
I feel like this is the only one. Yeah. I feel like this is the only one where you really need to kind of have been on board for at least most of these movies.
Yeah, for
You
sure
know?
there is a lot, and I like what you said. I mean, there's just a lot of little elements. Like I think Caesar's dynamic with some of the other characters, the other human character, and the gorilla villain. His interesting relationship with him, Caesar's son,
Yeah.
the death there is
What
that.
I like the leader that Caesar has become.
Yeah, yeah.
In four, it was, look, they were rising up. It was very violent and angry. And here he's obviously, become more mellow. And I think he's a good leader in this movie.
He does come off as a good leader, and I do kind of like their system of government, like where one of my favorite characters in the movie, hopefully you remember, is the keeper of the weapons. Like basically all
Oh
it,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
he was one of the top characters because he was literally like he's the one guy in the shack who guards all the guns, and like I will only get permission from the leader like of Caesar to get, and even if, and the great thing is you come to me and ask me for the guns, you have to convince me, Caesar, number one guy, why you're doing this. Why do you need guns? Why do you need
Yeah.
one? Why do you not need two? Like how many do you need? Why would a man need three or four? Like he like to get any kind of violence going is a difficult system, which was
Right.
great when the gorillas try to come in and be like, hey, I only answer to Caesar. Like I am the key. Get out of here. Like it was
They didn't
great.
care.
They didn't care. They
Yeah.
knocked him over, but that guy
Yeah.
was
That was good.
great. That guy was pretty great. But him and the orangutan Dr. Yais, he was good.
Yeah, that was
he,
good.
he was good.
Um,
I
so
like yeah.
Oh, I was going to say this one actually has an alternate ending as well. The
Okay.
original, they didn't film it, but the original script ended with human and ape children fighting on the playground. So another negative ending.
No, thank
I
you.
like this ending much more.
I mean, I could definitely see. And so they're
Right, and so it
continues.
continues.
Circling again, and
Right.
on a planet, third from the sun, there is ape and man. But no, it's been enough. Let's have a little.
Yes.
I think they've been through enough movies; they can do it, hopefully. But no, I would say you're right, kind of with the time and how long it was watching all of them. I did feel like this one probably had some of the biggest pacing issues. Like there were parts of it that felt a little slow. And
Yeah, I agree.
But I will say I wanted to really pick your brain on possibly the best or most annoying part of the movie when he is the weirdest, slowest chase when he is chasing the gorilla leader on the tree with everybody chanting ape has killed ape over and over again.
Oh,
It was
yeah, that was
it was
weird.
creepy and but it was like it goes on for and you're like, I'll admit I wasn't sure what was gonna happen, but I was
I
like
forgot about that. Did I yell out like enough? We
you were
get
like,
it.
we get it, ape killed
Yeah.
ape, we get it. Yeah, you did, but I don't know. I kinda liked it, but
No, it was stupid.
it was weird. I was like,
It was too long with it.
like I got it, but like they should have cut and like they should have
Yeah.
stopped chanting and then had like a minute or two where they maybe a quick exchange like no Caesar don't do it and he tried nah, that was a little too much I think on that.
Yeah, I
You
did not care for that part. I forgot all
you
about that.
do you think they copped out with the guy kind of falling because he didn't straight up kill him though it's like implied he might have like do you think he should have done it or should he given mercy again
Um,
what do you think?
I sort of got the sense that he did kill him. I know they didn't specifically show it, but certainly
He was going for him like
it's implied. Yeah, I mean, I think we're led to believe that that's what happened.
Mhm.
No, I was okay with it.
Okay. Yeah, you once again kill the bad guy. You didn't like what was is this gorilla
Well,
character the same guy that is in the Franco movies? The gorilla that goes against Caesar. Is that supposed to be the same character?
that's a good question. I wonder what the name is.
I forgot his
Right,
name,
because
but
Caesar obviously is the same name.
yeah, I wondered.
Um, I don't remember. Yeah, the one that was in they used that same ape in Jungle Book, remember, for the walking character.
Oh yeah,
Let me see here.
because yeah, he had the orangutan in that one, which was similar.
Right.
The gorilla with like the messed up eye or something.
Yeah. I don't know if I would assume it probably is supposed to be the same.
It's supposed to be a stand-in for the same. It's the same conflict, so
Right,
it's a
right.
gorilla. How do you feel about that? By the way, Dan, that like in the first movie, they have their different like divides, but not the different apes aren't like complete. They're not all like a certain way, but you see, they're a defense force. But in from two on, gorillas are the most aggressive, militaristic, evil. How do you feel about that?
Well, yeah, I think it's a little cut and dry.
Okay.
I think they could have had a little bit more nuance in there. But I mean, look, until this movie, they weren't really the focal point.
True. Actually, they've always. That's right. The second one, they were the ones going off to war, but then we didn't really see them specifically much in the other ones.
Right.
Good point.
So I don't know.
I guess not all the gorillas were like getting behind that guy. Some of them were nervous about rebelling against Caesar. Like, so I guess it wasn't 100%. But
no, it wasn't 100%. He had some of the gorilla faction, but yeah, I don't know. I sort of like the human component of this one though. More so than 3 and 4, which is probably the only thing I would give it something
Props.
for. But like, I like that teacher. Certainly there were some humans that weren't, complete jerks. They were obviously sort of enslaved in their own way. So it's like, they don't really have the ability to be complete jerks, I guess, like in 3 and 4. So they did actually give them a little bit more personality in this movie, I guess.
They did, and there was an attempt to show that the humans are trying their best to make it work too in the situation. So yeah, they weren't
Right.
all completely vilified either. So yeah, it was really more of a let's try to bring man and ape together and make it work. And I liked how it sort of kind of evolved from like that parallel of the answer to the beginning of the first movie where Zaius is like, we can't show any connection, man's evil, we can't possibly
Right.
lead over. Eventually, it does. They realize they're all the same, better for worse, but maybe that's a more indicative choice for healing and improvement than this consistent conflict through just denying it.
Well, and I also feel like it gives us a better place because the ending is, sort of more positive, as we said. I think it gives us a better idea of like, oh, okay, well, because Caesar existed, it did not go the way that Heston saw in that first movie.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe things could be a little bit more resolved or friendly or
Better.
cordial or whatever, better in some way. So I will give them props for that.
Okay. So you have issues with the movie, but you're kind of cool with some of the things it did, basically.
Yeah, I mean, I think it is a marked step down for sure from 3 and 4.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's nearly as bad as 2. And I would rewatch it again when I'm less tired
Hmm.
to see how it holds up. I think it's okay. I would leave this one with the battle with a C+. Or
Okay.
is this conquest? Wait, this is battle, right?
This is
I get so
battle. Yes. See,
confused. This is
see,
the last one. Okay,
this is
battle.
battle. Yeah, I think I'll agree with
I
that.
leave it
C
with a C
plus.
plus. Yeah.
Yeah, it seems okay. I think my biggest issue with it was just like there were some scenes that seemed kind of drawn out a bit too long, and it's juggling a lot, but maybe it could have followed through with some of the things a little bit more. But
Well, I think too, if they knew they were making the last one, and in fact, I'm looking at the poster here, it says the final chapter.
they know.
So they knew this was going to be the last one. I think they probably were throwing maybe too many things into the mix to resolve certain other things or tie it together or whatever. So perhaps it could have been 10 minutes longer to flesh some of that stuff out. It's only 93 minutes. I mean,
Yeah,
I think
it's
it's one of the shortest ones.
it is, and I
But
think I like the fact it's doing a lot, but yeah, maybe a little bit more time to go into because, like for instance, we meet his wife, but she's not even really a character. You know,
oh yeah, she's useless.
she's more useless than Nova. Like, I mean,
Right.
I don't know.
Right.
Seriously, I don't know. Really, she's sad about her son getting killed, and yeah, his son getting killed is sad, but we don't really know his son that well. We only care because it's Caesar's son. So there's like
Yeah, that's the only reason I cared. I didn't know him at all.
yeah, like
He
that's
did.
that. There's a lot of this movie. There are funny little things though, like the gorillas, are so warlike and they want to go to war, but then they leave and then they end up coming back just in time to kill the leader of the human guys,
Right.
the four guys in the bus. Like I thought that was kind of funny, and like that was one thing. I also did like how the um the humans that were left behind, the assistants have the choice to maybe destroy the bomb again, and they're like, no, let's just not do that. And that was without any influence of the apes. So maybe
Yeah.
maybe the humans could change too. You're right. So
So they've learned.
even the mutant weird people, like maybe they can change too, not worship the
Yeah.
bomb. So yeah, I like that. There is more of a positive hope there with that movie. But yeah, Dan, whew,
We
talk
went
about
ape for sure.
yeah, I marathoned it, and now the conversation is, and I'll be completely honest. I know we talk a lot, but I was not expecting myself to go in depth. But I wanted to like, I didn't. I recall I was trying to just like get all the segments together to try and recreate the plots, and
Yeah.
man, it's I wanted to be thorough. So wow, how do you feel, I guess, about the Planet of the Apes as a whole now? Because I remembered I talked about them, and I'd been surprised you hadn't seen them, but you were the one that was like, I guess I got to check it out because
Well, look, here's the truth of the matter. I uh, have a lot of big gaps in my classic films.
Me too.
You do. Now these not so much. You've seen all these, um, but I've been enjoying whether we review them or not. We've certainly done some that we haven't reviewed for YouTube, but whether we review them or not, I like sort of having somebody to talk about them with and to watch them with, because I'm the kind of person, you know me, I try to keep up on all the current TV and the current movies and this and that and the other thing. So I'm not typically going to just pop in some random movie from 1964 that's supposed to be good.
Hmm.
But look, if we do an event, if we get together or whatever,
Ah,
whether we do it for YouTube or not, I think it always sort of enhances it, and especially for something like this that I know you have fond associations with. um yeah, I mean, I'm all for it. I'm not sorry we marathoned it. It was a
okay.
long night, but look,
So, so
I've
you're
worked 9-hour shifts. What's the difference?
yeah.
Sitting watching 8-9 hours of Apes, I'll take that.
You'd think that, yeah, you'd think that would be something that I would not really be about. Like, yeah, I've worked plenty 9-hour days. Why is this more exhausting? I don't know. That's a that's
Right.
an interesting point. Maybe I shouldn't complain at all. But
Yeah.
no, in all honesty, though, might have been the time of the night we did it too. But no, so you would say that you are happy you watched them. Uh,
Oh yeah.
how do you feel about the Planet of the
In
Apes?
fact, the way we watched them, because we watched them the Friday of Easter weekend,
Mhm.
and so Saturday when I came home for Easter, I got to then talk to my dad about all these movies.
Mhm.
Because of course he's a huge fan. So it was great timing for that too.
How does he feel about them? Does he rank them similarly, or?
He doesn't really care for most of the sequels.
Ah,
Although he doesn't mind three.
okay.
Hates two. He thinks two was just the most useless thing. So we talked about that, how fake Heston and the whole bit. He didn't even really remember 4 and 5 too well, but once I reminded him of the Franco connections, he was like, "Oh, okay, yeah, I remember that now."
Gotcha.
I think like you, he probably only saw most of the sequels once, but the original he's seen who knows how many times, 10 or 12 probably.
Gotcha. But yeah, man,
So
I guess you how would you say you feel about the franchise as a whole? Do you if you could summarize Planet of the Apes, do you think it's worthy of its place as like classic sci-fi goodness or what?
well, I think what's interesting is you don't ever really hear anybody talk about any of the sequels.
True.
You hear them talk about the first one. So when you say its place, I don't know if the franchise has holds a place for people as much as just that first movie.
Hmm.
I think the reputation for the first movie is accurate.
Hmm.
I think it should rank up there, and it does for most people, as one of the great sci-fi films of all time.
Hmm.
And I think that's appropriate. In terms of the franchise as a whole, I think any franchise with 5 movies where there's only one negative grade and it's a C minus, not like a D, I think that's strong.
Yeah, and I think you're right. I mean, the first movie is just such a great film, and I think that's definitely the most iconic. And yeah, I feel like you're right. Maybe the sequels for this series have been like maybe they kind of have like a much smaller reputation, but I feel like there is a sort of a weird fandom to it because it got so many sequels. You had the show, and then enough inspiration to have another kind of reboot franchise, kind of
Right.
as we said, kind of more inspired by the sequels anyway. So I don't know. I think that it's interesting that maybe as a franchise, it's perhaps maybe a little understated or underestimated, but
Well, if you when you think about it, like the time frame, so the Franco movies um came out at a time where sci-fi, superhero stuff, action stuff is, I mean, it's what drives the box office. Other than animated movies, it's what drives the box office.
yeah,
Back when this came out, I think it was more of an outlier. I
yeah,
mean,
because
the top movies of the late '60s and early '70s were big musicals, dramas, kids movies, I guess too, a little bit, but something like this. I mean, we talked about this a little bit with the Time Machine too in 1960. I think stuff like this that was this successful was a little bit of an outlier.
Yeah, for it's one of the early, this and the Time Machine and a couple others are like examples of really the beginnings of just the little pushes of science fiction, popular and recognized in the mainstream as something good, you know.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and Star Trek obviously had a lot to do with that too. This was just a couple of
yes,
years after that.
yeah,
You
absolutely,
know,
yes. Trek 2, of course.
yeah,
Of course, can't get through a single
can't
conversation
get through
without
it
some
without.
Trek.
Well, we've
You know,
only mentioned Trek 5 times this conversation.
yeah, at least. Well,
between between Montalban, the composers, the whole bit.
well, look, to say it doesn't have some connection and influence to other great sci-fi things would be a lie. So,
Yes, yes, but no, much like the day the Earth stood still, and some of those early,
mhm.
you know,
uh,
sci-fi alien type movies
Forbidden Planet.
were
Yeah,
sort of that the template for those sorts of movies. I think, Time Machine, Planet of the Apes, I think are certainly.
and it's a good point you bring that up because I think Planet of the Apes, it kind of is in line with just kind of the shift of I think cinema in general with the directors, more of the auteurs breaking away from Hollywood and whatnot because the 70s is kind of like the beginning. I mean, you had like Space Odyssey before this too, but that's really like the beginning of like some of the big sci-fi movies is the
Yeah.
70s. So, and then into
Well, I
the
think
80s,
the '70s was sort of the start of almost all of that stuff because it was the start of true horror movies. You had The Exorcist and Jaws and that sort of thing,
Mhm.
and then sci-fi, like you mentioned, but then also the gritty dramas because you had Taxi Driver and Apocalypse Now and things like that.
It was finally like we can
So
get dirty, we can get messy, we can push the limit
right,
a bit more. Yeah.
well, because they were trying to compete with TV.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, but look, these are conversations for a different
Yes.
time. We could talk for a long, long time about it. But thank
Absolutely.
you for having me on your channel for this. I think this will be a fun series. We have 2 more videos to do.
Yes, we're going to. I think I kind of like the idea of breaking these up. So this 5 will be a long one. The other one hopefully won't be as long of a conversation. I think we'll just do the Burton movie by itself, and then we'll do the 3 Franco or rather Circus movies finally as one video. But
I think that's fine. Yep.
we can look forward to that too, and maybe I'll see you for some other videos soon. Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
No problem. All right, everybody, stay magical.